The chevrons locked in sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, each metallic clang echoing through the gate room like a countdown to something unknowable. Sergeant Walter Harriman's fingers hovered over the control panel as the seventh chevron slid into place with a resonance that felt different this time, heavier somehow, as if the Stargate itself sensed what was coming. The event horizon exploded outward in its familiar shimmering cascade before settling into the rippling vertical pool of impossible blue. But the readings were wrong. The wormhole signature didn't match any known address, and the energy fluctuation spiked across Carter's monitors like a seismograph during an earthquake. Unscheduled off-world activation. Harriman's voice carried the controlled urgency of a man who'd seen this scenario go sideways too many times. In the control room, Major Samantha Carter's eyes narrowed at her displays. "Sir, we're reading massive energy displacement, something's coming through, but the matter stream is enormous. Multiple contacts, heavily dense." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Whatever's coming through masses as much as a fully loaded cargo transport. 5 distinct signatures." Colonel Jack O'Neill moved to the window overlooking the gate room, P-90 already in hand. Below, SFFs poured in with practiced efficiency, taking defensive positions behind reinforced barriers. "Close the iris," he ordered, but his voice carried a question mark that everyone heard. "We can't, sir," Carter replied, her tone tight. "The wormhole established from the other side, they're already in the matter stream. Closing it now would," she didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what happened when the iris interrupted rematerialization. "Weapons hot," O'Neill commanded. "Whatever comes through, we give them exactly one chance to surrender." The event horizon rippled, and something emerged that made every weapon in the room shift target instinctively. The figure stood over 7 feet tall, clad in blue and gold armor that looked like it had been forged by gods who understood only war. Ceramite plates overlapped in perfect geometric precision, each surface scarred with battle damage that spoke of conflicts beyond imagination. A white helmet with a golden aquila turned slowly, red lenses sweeping the gate room with mechanical precision. In one hand, the figure carried a weapon too large for any human to wield, a bolter, though no one in the room had a name for it yet, its barrel assembly suggesting destructive capability that made staff weapons look primitive. Then a second figure materialized. And a third. And a fourth. And a fifth. 5 armored giants stood in a tactical formation that required no verbal communication, each covering overlapping fields of fire with weapons that hummed with lethal readiness. The lead figure, identifiable by the ornate laurel wreath carved into his helm and the flowing purity seals hanging from his armor, raised one massive gauntlet hand in a gesture that might have been peaceful, if peace could be associated with something that looked designed exclusively for slaughter. "Stand down." O'Neill's voice boomed through the loudspeaker. "You are in a United States military facility. Lower your weapons and identify yourselves, or we will open fire." The lead figure's helmet turned toward the control room window, those red lenses focusing with unnerving precision directly on O'Neill. When the figure spoke, his voice emerged through armor vocalizers with a depth that seemed to resonate in the bones of everyone present, a voice that carried the weight of centuries and the absolute certainty of someone who had never questioned his purpose. "I am Captain Titus of the Ultramarines Chapter, 4th Company. My brothers and I serve the Emperor of Mankind and have fought in his name across 1,000 worlds." The giant warrior slowly lowered his bolter to a ready position, not quite aiming but far from surrendered. "We mean no harm to the servants of humanity, but we will defend ourselves if fired upon. By the authority of the God Emperor, I request audience with your commanding officer." In the control room, Daniel Jackson had arrived, his glasses slightly askew from running. "Did he just say, God Emperor?" "Jack, these guys might be heavily armed and very large, Daniel. I noticed." O'Neill keyed the microphone again. "Captain Titus, you and your brothers are going to slowly place those weapons on the deck and step away from the Stargate. Then we'll talk about audiences." Titus stood motionless for 3 heartbeats. Then he maglocked his bolter to his thigh plate with a resonant clank and spread his hands large enough to crush a human skull like an egg. We will comply with disarmament protocols, but understand this, we are Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's Angels of Death. We have battled Xeno's horrors and heretical traitors for decades. If you are human, we are your protectors. If you are not, the implied threat hung in the air like cordite smoke. We will know. One by one, the 5 warriors secured their weapons, massive bolt pistols, chain blades that looked like industrial equipment repurposed for murder, and in one case, what appeared to be a heavy weapon that required mounting brackets built into the armor itself. They moved with practiced discipline, their movements economical despite their bulk, always maintaining tactical awareness even in surrender. General Hammond descended to the gate room, flanked by SFs whose assault rifles looked like toys compared to the arsenal the giants had just set down. The general stopped 10 feet from Captain Titus, refusing to be intimidated by the height difference even as the Space Marine loomed over him like a living monument to warfare. I'm Major General George Hammond, Commanding Officer of Stargate Command. You've come through the Stargate uninvited and heavily armed into a secure military installation. Hammond's Texas drawl carried steel. Before we discuss anything else, I need to know, how did you find this facility, and why are you here? Titus's helmet retracted with a hiss of pressurizing seals, revealing a face that belonged to a man who should have been in his 30s but whose eyes carried the weariness of someone who had seen centuries of horror. Scars traced his jawline, and a service stud gleamed above his brow. When he met Hammond's eyes, it was with the direct gaze of a fellow soldier. We did not choose this destination, General Hammond. My kill team was conducting a planetary survey in the Ultramar sector when a warp storm intersected with an ancient structure, a ring of stone covered in glyphs we did not recognize. The energies pulled us through, and we emerged here. He glanced back at the Stargate with something approaching reverence. If this is standard template construct technology from the Dark Age, it is far beyond anything remaining in the Imperium. Carter had joined the group, her scientific curiosity warring with tactical caution. You're saying you were pulled through from, where exactly? And what's a warp storm? The Space Marine who stood to Titus's right, his armor marked with Medicae symbols, spoke for the first time, his vocalizer-modified voice carrying clinical precision. The warp is the immaterium, the realm of chaos and demons. We traveled through a tear in reality itself. He paused, studying Carter with gene-enhanced eyes that cataloged details no normal human would notice. You do not know of the warp. Which means either you are primitives ignorant of the galaxy's true nature, or, his expression shifted to something approaching concern. We are far from the Imperium indeed. Daniel had been edging closer, his anthropologist instincts overriding his survival ones. You mentioned an emperor. Is that a title, or are you talking about an actual religious figure? Because the way you said God Emperor suggested worship, not just political allegiance. Titus turned his full attention to Daniel, and the intensity of that gaze made the archaeologist take an involuntary step back. The Emperor is the master of mankind, the omniscient, the source of all human strength in a galaxy that seeks our extinction. He has sat upon the golden throne for 10,000 years, holding back the tides of chaos through will alone. We are his angels of death, gene-forged from his own biological template to be humanity's ultimate warriors. Pride and fanaticism mixed in his voice. Every world we reclaim, every Xenos we purge, every heretic we execute, all in his name. The gate room had gone very quiet. O'Neill broke the silence with characteristic directness. Okay, so you're genetically engineered super soldiers from the far future who worship a 10,000-year-old corpse emperor and fight demons from hell. Carter, please tell me our day can't get weirder. Actually, sir, based on these bioscan readings, Carter studied her portable scanner with growing disbelief. They're reading as human, but with massive genetic modifications. Extra organs, redundant systems, enhanced bone density that's off the charts. Their armor alone masses over 400 kilograms, but they move like it's part of their body. Titus's expression hardened. We are not abominations, if that is your concern. We are humanity perfected for war, created by the Emperor's own design. Our gene seed is sacred, our purpose divine. He looked around the gate room, taking in the concrete, the technology, the very human faces of the defenders. This facility, you defend it as we would defend a fortress monastery. You wear uniforms and follow rank structure. You respond to threats with coordinated fire discipline. Respect entered his voice. You are warriors, even if you do not know the true scale of what threatens humanity. Hammond crossed his arms. Captain Titus, let's get something straight right now. We know exactly what threatens humanity. We've been fighting parasitic aliens called the Goa'uld who enslave entire worlds and claim to be gods. We've encountered dozens of hostile species through this Stargate, and we've survived because we don't worship anyone, we think, we adapt, and we make alliances. Alliances with Xenos? The word came from one of the other Marines, his tone carrying visceral disgust. That is heresy against. Silence, Leandros. Titus's command cut through instantly. He turned back to Hammond. Forgive my brother's zealousness. The Codex Astartes teaches that Xenos are to be purged without mercy, as they can never truly coexist with humanity. But, he paused, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his features. We are far from the Imperium, possibly far from our own time. If you fight parasitic Xenos who claim divinity, then we share an enemy. The Emperor protects those who protect humanity. TLC entered the gate room, his footsteps deliberate as he assessed the 5 giants with a warrior's eye. The Jaffa inclined his head slightly toward Hammond, then turned his attention to the Ultramarines. I am TLC. I sense you are formidable warriors. Your armor and bearing suggest decades of combat experience. Titus studied the Jaffa's gold tattoo, the staff weapon in his hands, and something shifted in his expression, recognition of a fellow soldier, regardless of origin. You bear the marks of service and honor. What is your designation? I am Jaffa. I once served the Goa'uld as First Prime but now fight for their destruction alongside my human companions of SG-1. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The Marine who had spoken before, Leandros, moved his hand toward his bolter before Titus's glare froze him in place. You serve the parasitic Xenos? And these humans trust you? He earned that trust, O'Neill said flatly, moving to stand beside TLC. By helping us fight for 7 years, by saving our lives more times than I can count, and by proving that where you come from doesn't matter as much as what you do. Captain, you and your brothers are going to learn real quick that we do things differently here. Titus was silent for a long moment, his eyes moving from TLC to O'Neill to the SF still maintaining their defensive positions. Finally, he nodded slowly. Different times demand different tactics. The Codex Astartes itself teaches that rigid doctrine in the face of novel circumstances is the path to defeat. He looked back at his brothers, then to Hammond. General, my kill team is stranded in unknown territory without resupply or extraction. By the laws of the Imperium and the oaths we swore, we are bound to defend humanity wherever we find it. If you face enemies who threaten your people, then the Ultramarines stand ready to serve. Hammond exchanged glances with O'Neill, then Carter, reading the mixture of concern and curiosity on their faces. We'll need to debrief you thoroughly, run medical examinations, and figure out exactly what we're dealing with. In the meantime, you and your men will be confined to secure quarters under guard. No weapons. Understood. Titus straightened to attention, fist slamming against his chest plate in a salute that echoed like a thunderclap. The Emperor protects, General Hammond. And so shall we. As the Ultramarines were led away, their massive frames requiring the corridors to be cleared and doorways to be navigated sideways. Carter fell into step beside O'Neill. Sir, if even half of what they're saying is true, we're looking at a future where humanity survives by becoming, she struggled for the right word. Monsters? Daniel offered quietly. Jack, they're talking about purging entire species, worshipping an emperor as a god, genetic engineering on a massive scale. That's everything we've fought against. O'Neill watched the giants disappear around a corner, their armored footsteps shaking the floor even in retreat. Maybe. Or maybe they're what happens when humanity fights for 10,000 years and barely survives. He turned to Hammond. General, we need to know everything about these guys, where they're really from, what they're really capable of, and whether that God Emperor stuff is religious fanaticism or something we don't understand yet. Agreed, Hammond said. But Colonel, there's something else that concerns me. Captain Titus recognized our military protocols instantly. He called the Stargate standard template construct technology. And did you notice how he looked at the gate itself? Like he'd seen it before, Carter breathed. Sir, what if the ancients and their dark age of technology are the same thing? What if humanity's future becomes the Imperium because of what we're doing right now? The implications hung in the air like fallout. Through the control room window, they could see the Stargate still active, its event horizon rippling with the echoes of a connection between two versions of humanity, one that ascended to higher planes of existence, and one that descended into endless, necessary war. In the distance, Captain Titus's voice carried back through the corridors, leading his brothers in a low chant that had been old when the Imperium was young, and they shall know no fear. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Indeed. The gate shut down with its characteristic whoosh, but everyone present knew that what had come through would change everything. 5 angels of death from humanity's darkest future had arrived, bringing weapons that could shatter cities and ideology that could reshape worlds. The only question was whether Stargate Command had just gained humanity's greatest defenders, or glimpsed the nightmare that awaited if they failed. The medical bay had been cleared of all non-essential personnel, leaving only Dr. Janet Fraser, 2 armed SFs, and 5 genetically engineered giants who made the examination tables look like children's furniture. Captain Titus stood bare-chested in the center of the room, his power armor carefully disassembled and under guard in an adjacent vault, while Brother Claudius, the apothecary, provided running commentary that sounded more like a technical manual than a medical consultation. The SUSN membrane allows for voluntary suspended animation, Claudius explained as Fraser's scanner passed over Titus's chest cavity. The osmodula reinforced his skeleton during adolescent gene seed implantation. The Biscopia and Magnificat account for the enhanced musculature, approximately 4 times standard human strength, though Brother Varus exceeds that due to additional chemical therapy. Fraser's hands were steady, but her expression betrayed her growing incredulity. Doctor, you're describing surgical modifications that would take decades to heal from, let alone survive. When you say, gene seed implantation, are you talking about organ transplants? 19 additional organs implanted over 6 years of transformation, Claudius replied with clinical precision. The process has a mortality rate of approximately 50%. Those who survive become Adeptus Astartes. Those who do not serve the Emperor in death, their gene seed harvested for the next generation of warriors. 50%, Fraser repeated, her voice tight. You're telling me that half of all candidates die during this process, and you consider this acceptable? Titus spoke without looking at her, his eyes focused on the middle distance. It is necessary. The enemies of humanity do not care for our comfort or morality. They care only for our extinction. The Astartes endure what normal humans cannot so that humanity survives. His scarred torso bore testament to decades of warfare, fused burn marks from plasma weapons, the distinctive circular scars of bolter wounds healed by his Laraman cells, and a jagged line across his abdomen where something with claws had nearly eviscerated him. In the observation room above, Hammond stood with SG-1, watching through reinforced glass as Fraser continued her examination. The bioscan results scrolled across Carter's tablet, each reading more impossible than the last. 3 lungs, 2 hearts, an organ that specifically neutralizes toxins, another that allows him to learn by eating genetic material. Carter shook her head slowly. Sir, they've turned human beings into biological weapons platforms. Every system has redundancy. Even if you destroyed one heart, he'd keep fighting. They're also showing signs of extreme indoctrination, Daniel added, his anthropologist training picking up details the medical scans couldn't capture. Notice how Titus references the Emperor in every third sentence. The ritualistic language, the absolute certainty. This isn't just military discipline, it's religious programming on a massive scale. O'Neill leaned against the window frame, arms crossed. So we've got 5 super soldiers who've been brainwashed to worship a dead emperor, genetically modified to the point where they're barely human anymore, and equipped with weapons that make Goa'uld staff blasts look like firecrackers. He glanced at Hammond. Permission to be extremely concerned, sir. Granted, Hammond replied dryly. But concern doesn't change the tactical reality. They're here, they claim to want to help, and according to the preliminary analysis of their weapons, they could tear through this facility if they chose to. He turned to Carter. Major, what did you find when you examined their equipment? Carter pulled up a holographic display that showed the disassembled components of a bolt pistol. The weapon they call a bolter fires self-propelled explosive rounds, basically miniature rockets with mass-reactive warheads. Each round is designed to penetrate armor, then detonate inside the target. The metallurgy alone is beyond anything we've seen except ancient technology. And that's their sidearm. The heavy weapon Brother Varus was carrying. Carter continued, switching displays. Best we can tell, it's designed to provide sustained suppressive fire against vehicle-sized targets. The ammunition feed alone weighs 60 kilograms. He carries it like a rifle. TLC, who had been observing in characteristic silence, finally spoke. I have fought Jaffa warriors enhanced by symbiotes, Kull warriors augmented by Goa'uld science, and even replicators formed from pure technology. These Astartes possess greater physical capability than any of them. He paused, measuring his words carefully. But they also possess something more dangerous, absolute conviction in their purpose. Such warriors will never hesitate, never question, never break. They will be invaluable allies or unstoppable enemies. There will be no middle ground. The observation room door opened, and Major Paul Davis entered with a classified folder. General Hammond, the President has been briefed. He wants a full threat assessment within 12 hours and recommendations on whether these Ultramarines should be detained indefinitely or recruited. Davis glanced through the window at Titus. The Joint Chiefs are already discussing the strategic implications of genetic enhancement on this scale. Let me guess, O'Neill said. NID wants to dissect them and steal the technology. The NID wants to study them, Davis corrected carefully. Along with their armor, weapons, and any information they have about genetic engineering techniques. Colonel Mayborn has already filed 3 requests for access. Over my dead body, Hammond stated flatly. Captain Titus and his men came through the gate asking for alliance, not imprisonment. Until they prove hostile, they're to be treated as military allies from an unknown origin point. Below, Fraser had finished her preliminary examination and was speaking quietly with Claudius, comparing notes with a mixture of professional fascination and ethical horror. The apothecary gestured to a device Mag locked to his belt, the reductor, designed to extract gene seed from fallen Astartes in the field, and Fraser physically recoiled. You harvest organs from your dead brothers. Her voice carried up to the observation room. For transplantation into new candidates. The gene seed is sacred, Claudius replied without a trace of defensiveness. Each of us carries the genetic legacy of our Primarch, Robot Guilliman, and through him, the Emperor himself. To allow gene seed to be lost is to diminish the chapter's strength and betray those who died to protect humanity. The progenoid glands mature over decades of service. When a brother falls, his gene seed ensures that 2 more Astartes will one day take his place. He met her eyes directly. You see horror. I see duty and honor given physical form. Fraser took a breath, clearly wrestling with the medical ethics of a civilization 10,000 years beyond her reference point. I need to examine the others. If they're all modified to this degree, I need to establish baselines in case of injury or illness. We do not fall ill, Claudius said matter-of-factly. The oolitic kidney filters toxins, the preoner predigests potentially lethal substances, and the Laraman cells seal wounds at accelerated rates. Astartes physiology is designed for combat operations in the most hostile environments across the galaxy. Your medicines and diseases are no threat to us. Nothing is invulnerable, Fraser countered. Trust me, I've treated people who thought they were invincible right up until they ended up on my examination table. You will submit to full medical evaluation, or General Hammond will confine you to quarters indefinitely. Titus, who had been donning his armor with Claudius's assistance, each ceramite plate locking into place with mechanical precision, turned to face Fraser. The sheer presence of him in full battle plate transformed the medical bay into a war zone. Your concern for our welfare honors you, Doctor. We will comply with your examinations. But understand, we are not patients. We are warriors who have fought in conditions that would kill unaugmented humans in seconds. We have breathed vacuum, survived plasma immersion, and endured wounds that would have felled entire squads of lesser soldiers. We submit to your scans not because we need your care, but because you need to understand what stands ready to defend you. The door to the medical bay opened, and Hammond entered with SG-1, the sudden increase in tension palpable as two military philosophies prepared to collide. Hammond positioned himself where he could address all 5 Ultramarines simultaneously, his weathered face revealing nothing of the strategic calculations running through his mind. Captain Titus, I've reviewed Dr. Fraser's preliminary findings and Major Carter's analysis of your equipment. I've also consulted with my command staff and the Joint Chiefs. He paused, letting the weight of authority settle. You present us with an extraordinary situation. You claim to come from humanity's far future, you're equipped with technology we can barely understand, and you're genetically modified to a degree that borders on, he chose his words carefully, something other than human. Leandros, the tactical marine whose armor bore the most purity seals, stiffened visibly. We are more than human, General Hammond, not less. We are what humanity must become to survive. Brother Leandros, Titus's voice carried warning, but Hammond raised a hand. Let him speak. I want to understand what we're dealing with. Leandros stepped forward, his vocalizers amplifying words that carried the fervor of absolute faith. In the galaxy we know, humanity teeters on the edge of extinction every day. The Xenos, aliens, outnumber us billions to one. Creatures of chaos hunger for our souls. Traitor legions who turn from the Emperor's light seek to destroy everything we've built. The Adeptus Astartes are humanity's last, best defense. We are gene-forged angels who stand between civilization and annihilation. Without us, humanity would have fallen millennia ago. Daniel had pulled out a small notebook, his archaeologist instincts cataloging cultural patterns. But at what cost? You've described a civilization built on genetic purity, religious fanaticism, and genocidal warfare against anything non-human. That's not evolution, it's devolution into exactly the kind of tyranny we fight against. You fight with ideals, Leandros countered. We fight with reality. How many billions of humans would you sacrifice to preserve diplomatic relations with Xenos who view you as prey? How many worlds would you allow to burn before accepting that some enemies cannot be reasoned with, only destroyed? Enough. Titus's command silenced Leandros instantly. The captain turned to Hammond, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weariness of someone who had grappled with these questions across decades of warfare. General, my brother speaks from passion, but his words carry truth wrapped in zealotry. The Imperium is brutal, totalitarian, and merciless. It executes billions for crimes of thought, wages wars of extermination against entire species, and treats human life as ammunition in an endless war. He paused, and something haunted flickered in his eyes. And it is still the lesser evil compared to what waits in the darkness between stars. The medical bay had gone silent except for the low hum of monitoring equipment. O'Neill broke the quiet with characteristic directness. Okay, so you're from a nightmare future where humanity survives by becoming monsters. Great. Question is, why should we trust you? And don't tell me the Emperor protects, because we've met enough false gods claiming to protect humanity while enslaving it. Titus removed his helmet, meeting O'Neill's gaze with the directness of one soldier to another. Colonel O'Neill, I do not ask for your trust. I ask for the opportunity to earn it through action. You face enemies called Goa'uld who claim divinity and enslave worlds. My brothers and I have fought similar parasites, the enslavers, who bend minds and consume souls. You struggle against technological horrors called replicators. We have battled the Necrons, ancient machines that harvest living beings for their master's resurrection. He gestured to his assembled kill team. We offer our bolters, our gene-forged strength, and our tactical experience gained across 1,000 campaigns. In exchange, we ask only the chance to serve humanity's defense until we can return to our own time. And if you can't return? Carter asked. If the wormhole that brought you here was a one-time anomaly, do you become part of our command structure, or do you try to reshape our civilization into the Imperium you serve? The question landed like a bomb. The 5 Ultramarines exchanged glances, a wordless communication passing between them. Finally, Brother Maximus, the assault marine who had remained silent until now, spoke, his voice surprisingly young beneath the vocalizer's distortion. The Codex Astartes teaches that the Astartes serve humanity, not rule it. We are weapons, General Hammond, not kings. If we cannot return to our chapter, then we continue our mission here, defend humanity from Xeno's threats, purge heresy and corruption, and ensure that this version of our species survives to reach the stars. He paused. Whether that leads to the Imperium we know or some other future is not for us to determine. We are soldiers, not prophets. Hammond nodded slowly, his decision crystallizing. Here's what's going to happen. You will be assigned temporary quarters under guard. You will surrender your weapons to our armory, where Major Carter will study them with your cooperation. You will submit to full medical evaluation. And you will provide complete briefings on your capabilities, your technology, and your knowledge of threats similar to what we face. He held Titus's gaze. In exchange, I'm willing to authorize a trial integration with SG-1 for an off-world mission. You prove you can work within our protocols and respect our methods, and we'll discuss a longer-term arrangement. And if we prove incompatible with your methods? Titus asked. Then you'll have comfortable quarters, 3 meals a day, and a lot of time to discuss philosophy with Dr. Jackson while we figure out how to send you home, O'Neill said. We're not going to lock you in a cell, but we're also not giving you free run of the base until we know you're not going to start purging anyone who doesn't worship your emperor. Titus considered this for a long moment, then slammed his fist against his chestplate in salute. Acceptable terms, General Hammond. The Ultramarines accept your protocol. We will prove our worth. As the arrangements were made and the Ultramarines were escorted to secure quarters, Hammond pulled O'Neill aside in the corridor. Jack, I want your honest assessment. Are we making a mistake here? O'Neill watched the giants navigate the corridor, their ceramite armor scraping the walls despite their careful movements. Sir, I've seen a lot of strange things come through that gate. Allies who became enemies, enemies who became allies, and a whole bunch of stuff that should have killed us but didn't because we had help from people we had no business trusting. He turned to Hammond. These guys scare the hell out of me. They're weapons with religious programming and enough firepower to level a city block. But you know what scares me more? The fact that they might be right. That maybe humanity's only shot at surviving out there is to become exactly what they are. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Hammond said quietly. Yeah, O'Neill agreed. Let's hope. In the secure quarters 3 levels below, Captain Titus knelt before a small shrine he had constructed from purity seals and a hololithic image of the Emperor. His brothers knelt beside him, and together they recited the litany of protection, their voices low and fervent. The Emperor protects. The Emperor guides. The Emperor watches over his servants in the darkness. We are his angels, his wrath made manifest, his mercy for the faithful. Though we walk in shadow, we carry his light. Though we face extinction, we know no fear. None of them noticed the security camera tracking their ritual, or the analysts in another room trying to determine if they were watching prayer or programming. In the uncertain space between faith and fanaticism, 5 angels of death prepared for whatever war would come next. The briefing room had been reconfigured to accommodate the Ultramarines' bulk, the standard chairs replaced with reinforced benches that groaned under the weight of ceramite and gene-forged muscle. Captain Titus stood at parade rest before the conference table where Hammond, SG-1, and Major Davis sat with tablets displaying information that seemed increasingly inadequate as the debriefing progressed. Behind Titus, his 4 battle brothers maintained perfect stillness, their armor creating an imposing wall of blue and gold that dominated the room's psychology. Carter had spent the last hour attempting to map the Imperium's technological capabilities onto any framework that made sense, and failing. Her tablet displayed schematics of bolter mechanisms, power armor servosystems, and references to technologies that violated known physics. Captain, you've mentioned warp travel several times. Can you explain how that works without using terms like immaterium or demonic incursion? Titus's expression suggested he was being asked to explain breathing. Imagine your universe as a sheet of parchment. Warp space exists beneath that sheet, a roiling sea of pure psychic energy and emotion given form. Ships equipped with Geller fields punch through the material realm, travel through the warp's currents where distance is meaningless, then re-emerge at their destination. Without Geller field protection, the entities that inhabit the warp, demons born of humanity's darkest impulses, would consume the crew's souls. The room had gone very quiet. Daniel removed his glasses, cleaning them with deliberate slowness. You're describing a dimension of literal hell populated by beings that feed on human emotion. And your civilization travels through it regularly. Daily, Brother Claudius confirmed. Warp travel is the only method of faster-than-light transit available to the Imperium. The alternative is to remain isolated on individual worlds, which would doom humanity to fragmentation and extinction. His clinical tone made the horror sound routine. Casualties from warp travel are acceptable losses compared to strategic paralysis. O'Neill leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Okay, new rule, nobody mentions acceptable losses when describing civilian casualties. We get it, your future is grim. But we operate under slightly different rules, like, try not to damn people's souls to literal hell demons. The colonel speaks from a position of luxury, Leandros interjected, his voice tight with barely controlled fervor. Your wars are small. Your enemies are comprehensible. You have not watched hive fleets consume entire sectors, their hunger blotting out stars. You have not seen chaos corruptions turn entire worlds into screaming nightmares of flesh and madness. You have not stood on the walls when the Neverborn come clawing through reality itself. Brother Leandros, Titus's warning carried an edge, but Leandros pressed forward. They judge us for our methods without understanding our necessity. The Codex Astartes exists because Robot Guilliman understood that half measures doom civilizations. Mercy toward Xenos is suicide. Tolerance of mutation is corruption. Questioning the Emperor's divinity is heresy. These are not philosophical positions, they are survival protocols written in the blood of billions. Daniel stood, his anthropologist's patience finally exhausted. Listen to yourself. You're describing a fascist theocracy that executes people for independent thought. The Goa'uld claimed similar justifications, that their rule was necessary for humanity's survival, that without them we destroy ourselves. We proved them wrong by choosing freedom over security. And how many of your people died learning that lesson? Titus asked quietly. How many worlds burned before you developed the strength to resist? How many humans remain enslaved across your galaxy because you lack the military capacity to liberate them all? His scarred face showed no judgment, only grim calculation. The Imperium made different choices. We accepted tyranny to prevent extinction. We embraced genetic modification to match Xenos physically. We worship the Emperor because his vision and sacrifice have sustained humanity for 10 millennia. You may judge these choices as evil, Dr. Jackson. We judge them as necessary. Hammond raised a hand, forestalling Daniel's response. Gentlemen, we're not here to debate political philosophy. We're here to establish whether the Ultramarines can operate within Stargate Command's protocols. He fixed Titus with a commanding stare. Captain, I need specifics. Your weapons, your armor, your genetic modifications, walk me through exactly what you're capable of and what limitations you face. Titus nodded, his professionalism reasserting itself. My kill team consists of 5 Astartes, each with specialized roles. I serve as tactical commander with 43 years of combat experience across 17 different war zones. Brother Leandros is a codex specialist, tactical doctrine, enemy pattern analysis, strategic planning. Brother Claudius serves as apothecary, combat medic, biological warfare specialist, and gene seed recovery officer. Brother Varus operates as our devastator, heavy weapon suppression and fortification assault. Brother Maximus is our assault specialist, close quarters combat, rapid deployment, and breach operations. Carter's fingers flew across her tablet, cataloging capabilities. You mentioned gene seed recovery. That's the organ harvesting Dr. Fraser mentioned. The progenoid glands mature within each Astartes, storing genetic information from all 19 implanted organs, Claudius explained. Upon death, these glands are extracted and used to create new gene seed for future initiates. Without recovery, the chapter's genetic legacy dies with the fallen brother. He gestured to the Narthetium, the medical suite built into his armor's gauntlet. The reductor extracts the glands in the field. It is the most sacred duty an apothecary performs. How long can you operate without resupply? O'Neill asked, his special forces background recognizing the critical question. Brother Varus spoke for the first time, his voice a deep rumble. Each of us carries approximately 400 rounds for our bolters, 60 rounds for sidearms, and 4 fragmentation grenades. My heavy bolter has a sustained ammunition load of 600 rounds. Power armor operates on internal reactors that will function for decades. Ration requirements are minimal. Astartes can enter SUS in hibernation and survive months without sustenance. So you're self-sufficient for extended operations, Hammond noted. What about repair and maintenance? Your armor must require specialized equipment. The Omnicia provides, Leandros said reflexively, then caught himself. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the tech priests of Mars, maintain all Astartes equipment through sacred rituals and machine blessings. Without access to their forges and litanies, he hesitated, the first crack in his certainty appearing. We can perform field repairs using the tools in our armor's repair kit, but catastrophic damage would require resources we do not possess in this time. Carter leaned forward, sensing opportunity. What if I told you we have access to technology that's potentially more advanced than anything in your Imperium? The Ancients, a race that built the Stargate network, left behind devices and knowledge that operate on principles we're still trying to understand. If you're willing to work with our scientists, we might be able to integrate ancient technology with your equipment, extend your operational capacity, and Heresy, Leandros stated flatly. The use of Xenos technology is forbidden by the Codex Astartes. To integrate alien systems into sacred Astartes armor would be abomination. The Ancients were human, Daniel interjected. They were an advanced human civilization that ascended to a higher plane of existence millions of years ago. The Stargate, the technology throughout this facility, it's all human in origin, just from our distant past. The Ultramarines exchanged glances, a rapid nonverbal communication passing between them. Titus's expression shifted through calculation to something approaching revelation. If what you say is true, then your ancients may be connected to humanity's dark age of technology, the era before the age of strife when mankind reached across the galaxy and achieved wonders the Imperium can no longer replicate. He turned to his brothers. The standard template constructs we seek are fragments of that lost age. If these ancients represent that same epoch, then their technology would not be Xenos, but the sacred inheritance of humanity's golden age, Claudius finished, his clinical tone carrying reverence. The Adeptus Mechanicus would declare such discoveries holy relics, gifts from the Omnicia to guide humanity back to technological supremacy. Leandros's objection died unspoken, the theological calculus shifting beneath him. Carter seized the opening. Then you'd be willing to let me examine your equipment? Not to dissect or steal, but to understand how your technology works and potentially integrate it with ancient systems. Titus considered for a long moment, his gene-enhanced mind weighing tactical necessity against doctrinal prohibition. Under supervision and with full transparency, Major Carter. Our armor and weapons are sacred, but they are also tools meant to defend humanity. If your ancient technology can enhance our capability to serve that purpose, the Emperor would demand we investigate. Progress, O'Neill muttered. Okay, next question. You've mentioned enemies you fought, enslavers, Necrons, chaos, all very scary sounding. How do those compare to what we face? Because I want to know if your combat experience actually translates or if you're going to Rambo your way through situations that require finesse. Brother Maximus responded, his young voice carrying hard-earned wisdom. We are not berserkers, Colonel. The Codex Astartes contains tactical doctrine for every conceivable combat scenario: asymmetric warfare, siege operations, Xenos pacification, insurgency suppression, void combat, chemical warfare, psychic threats, and diplomatic protection. Each Astartes studies these doctrines for years before receiving his first combat assignment. He paused. But doctrine must adapt to reality. Tell us of your enemies, and we will tell you if our experience applies. Daniel pulled up holographic displays showing Goa'uld, Jaffa warriors, staff weapons, and Hatak motherships. The Goa'uld are parasitic aliens that take human hosts. They command armies of Jaffa, humans who carry Goa'uld larvae and serve as soldiers. They use energy weapons, personal shields, and ships that outgun anything Earth has built. But their real power is psychological. They've convinced entire populations they're gods, using advanced technology as proof of divinity. Parasitic Xenos claiming godhood over enslaved humans, Titus summarized. We have encountered similar threats. The enslavers enter through psychic rifts and take control of host bodies, using them as puppets to spread their influence. We purge infestation sites with extreme prejudice, orbital bombardment if necessary to prevent spread. We generally try to avoid blowing up planets, O'Neill said dryly. Because you lack the naval capacity or the strategic necessity? Leandros challenged. Because we have this radical idea that maybe planets full of innocent people shouldn't be turned into craters, O'Neill shot back. Look, I get it. You come from a place where the only solution is overwhelming firepower. But we operate differently. We save people. We make alliances. We find another way. Until you cannot, Titus said quietly. Colonel, I do not question your commitment to preserving life. But in my experience, enemies that take hostages and hide behind civilians do so because they know their opponents possess mercy they can exploit. The Goa'uld enslave entire worlds because they correctly calculate that you will not sacrifice those worlds to destroy the Goa'uld. His gaze was direct, without judgment. This makes you honorable. It also makes you vulnerable. TLC, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. Captain Titus, I was first prime to the system Lord Apophis. I enforced his will across countless worlds, believing him to be a god. I personally killed thousands in his name. The room had gone still. I learned that false gods fear nothing more than those who refuse to kneel. The Goa'uld are not invincible. They can be defeated through unity, courage, and the willingness of free people to resist tyranny. Your Imperium may have forgotten this truth, that free humans fighting for their own survival are more powerful than enslaved humans fighting for their masters. The Jaffa's words hung in the air like a challenge. Leandros opened his mouth to respond, but Titus raised a hand, forestalling the objection. The captain studied TLC with new attention, recognition of something fundamental passing between two warriors who had both served tyrants and chosen different paths. You speak wisdom, TLC of the Jaffa. Perhaps there are lessons the Imperium has forgotten in its 10,000 years of survival. Titus straightened. Very well. General Hammond, you offer us trial integration with an off-world mission. We accept, with the understanding that we will follow your tactical protocols and rules of engagement. If our methods prove incompatible, we will submit to whatever judgment you deem appropriate. Hammond nodded, satisfied. Colonel O'Neill, prepare SG-1 for a standard reconnaissance mission, something low-risk where we can evaluate how the Ultramarines perform under controlled conditions. Major Carter, you'll coordinate with Captain Titus on equipment integration. Dr. Jackson, I want cultural briefings for both sides, make sure everyone understands each other's capabilities and limitations. As the meeting broke up and the Ultramarines filed out, Daniel caught up with Titus in the corridor. Captain, can I ask you something personal? Titus paused, his massive frame making the hallway feel claustrophobic. Speak. Do you really believe your Emperor is a god? Or is it just something you say because it's expected? The Space Marine was silent for a long moment, his scarred face unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. Dr. Jackson, I have fought demons that should not exist. I have seen worlds consumed by chaos where reality itself breaks down. I have watched Brother Astartes fall to corruption and become monsters worse than any Xenos. And through it all, the Emperor's will has sustained us. His light drives back the darkness. His sacrifice on the golden throne holds back tides of horror you cannot imagine. He met Daniel's eyes directly. Whether he is a god in the way you understand divinity, I cannot say. But he is the only thing standing between humanity and annihilation. That makes him worthy of worship, whether or not he desires it. The Space Marine walked away, leaving Daniel to contemplate a future where humanity had traded every ideal for survival, and wondered if it had been worth the price. The Stargate activation sequence echoed through the embarkation room as chevrons locked with mechanical precision. SG-1 stood in full field gear, P-90S, tactical vests, GDOs, looking almost fragile next to the 5 Ultramarines who dominated the space like walking monuments to war. Captain Titus had agreed to carry only sidearms for this first mission, his bolt pistol mag locked to his thigh plate, though O'Neill suspected that even unarmed, the Space Marines could tear through a Jaffa patrol without breaking stride. P3X-774, Carter reported from her position near the ramp. MALP data shows a human settlement, Bronze Age technology level, no Goa'uld presence detected. Should be a straightforward first contact and cultural survey. Defined straightforward, O'Neill muttered, checking his P-90's magazine for the third time. Because in my experience, the universe has a sick sense of humor about these things. Titus descended the ramp with his kill team, their armored footsteps resonating through the concrete. The Ultramarines had spent the past 2 days in intensive briefings about SGC protocols, non-interference with developing cultures, diplomatic engagement before military action, the importance of not terrifying Bronze Age villagers with 8-foot-tall armored giants. Leandros had objected strenuously to what he called coddling primitives who should be brought into imperial compliance, but Titus had enforced discipline with the absolute authority of a Space Marine captain. Captain, your team will follow SG-1's lead on all cultural interactions, Hammond reminded from the control room. This is a reconnaissance and first contact mission. We're there to observe, assess, and establish friendly relations if possible. No weapons free unless absolutely necessary for self-defense. Understood, General. Titus's acknowledgement carried the weight of a binding oath. He turned to his brothers, switching to rapid-fire battle cant that the SGC's translators couldn't quite parse. Whatever he said, the other Ultramarines responded with fist-to-chestplate salutes that echoed like gunfire. The event horizon stabilized, and SG-1 moved through with practiced efficiency. The Ultramarines followed, and for a moment the wormhole seemed to strain against the sheer mass of ceramite and gene-forged biology being dematerialized. Then they were through, emerging on a hillside overlooking a valley where a small settlement sprawled beside a river, smoke rising from cooking fires and the distant sounds of agriculture drifting on the wind. The jarring transition from SGC's fluorescent sterility to alien sunlight never got old. O'Neill took point, P-90 at low ready, scanning for threats while his team oriented themselves. Behind him, the Ultramarines emerged like gods stepping into the mortal realm, their armor catching the binary sun's light and throwing it back in shards of blue and gold brilliance. MALP data confirmed, Carter reported, checking her scanner. Settlement approximately 2 kilometers east, population estimate 4 to 500. Technology consistent with Bronze Age, metallurgy, basic agriculture, no power sources detected. Daniel had his binoculars out, studying the settlement's architecture. Looks like standard ancient seated human population. The building styles suggest Egyptian or Mesopotamian influence, which means the Goa'uld probably visited here at some point but didn't establish permanent occupation. Likely deemed strategically worthless, Titus observed, his gene-enhanced vision requiring no magnification to catalog details that would take Daniel minutes to identify. Insufficient resources to warrant garrison, population too small for meaningful slave labor. A wise enemy would mark this world for future exploitation and move on. Except we don't call them enemies until they actually attack us, O'Neill reminded. And we definitely don't refer to people as slave labor potential. First contact protocols, Captain. We're diplomats today, not conquerors. The march to the settlement took 30 minutes, the Ultramarines' armor servos whirring softly as hydraulic systems compensated for uneven terrain. Brother Maximus had taken up rear guard, his enhanced senses scanning for threats with the paranoid vigilance of someone who'd survived combat in environments where the terrain itself could kill. Brother Varus's heavy weapon remained mag-locked to his back, but his hands never strayed far from it. They crested the final hill overlooking the settlement, and that's when the situation deteriorated. The village square had been transformed into a nightmare. 15 villagers knelt in a line, hands bound behind their backs, while Jaffa warriors in Apophis's serpent guard armor paced behind them with staff weapons at ready. A Goa'uld Hatak descended slowly above the village, its pyramid shape blocking out one of the suns, its shadow falling across the terrified population like judgment itself. Damn it, O'Neill breathed. Carter, I thought MALP said no Goa'uld presence. MALP surveyed 12 hours ago, sir. They must have arrived after. Her explanation was cut off by the distinctive crack of a staff weapon firing. One of the kneeling villagers collapsed, their body smoking from the energy blast. The remaining prisoners screamed, and children in the crowd began wailing. TLC's expression had gone stone cold. That is Goa'uld, a minor underlord in Apophis's service. He takes slaves and executes those who resist as example to others. Zeno's enslaving humans, Leandros growled, his hand moving toward his bolt pistol. This is abomination. Stand down, Titus commanded, though his own jaw had tightened with barely controlled fury. Colonel O'Neill, what are your protocols for this scenario? O'Neill was already calculating angles, distances, cover positions. A standard Jaffa complement for a Hatak this size would be 30 to 40 warriors, half of whom were probably in the village securing prisoners. The ship's weapons could level the settlement, but Goa'uld rarely destroyed potential slaves without reason. The tactical situation was terrible, but not impossible. We observe and assess, O'Neill said, though the words tasted like ash. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and one wrong move gets those villagers killed. We pull back, report to Hammond, and come back with reinforcements or a plan. You would abandon these people to slavery? Maximus's young voice carried disbelief. While you possess the strength to intervene. While we possess the strength to get them all killed, yeah, O'Neill shot back. Look, I know it sucks. I hate it. But rushing in against 40 Jaffa and a Hatak with 5 humans and 5, he caught himself. With 10 soldiers isn't rescue, it's suicide. Below, another staff weapon fired. Another villager fell. The Goa'uld host, Goa'uld, wearing the golden armor and serpent helmet of System Lord rank, stepped forward, his voice amplified through the armor systems to carry across the square. You dare resist your gods? The synthetic distortion couldn't hide the pleasure in his tone. You who were given life by the grace of Apophis. Every death is your burden, your failure to kneel before divine will. 10 more will die unless you offer yourselves willingly to serve. Titus watched the scene with the cold calculation of someone who'd witnessed similar atrocities across 100 worlds. Colonel, if we withdraw, how many of these people will survive? Some, O'Neill admitted. The Goa'uld need slaves more than corpses. They'll take who they want, kill enough to make a point, and leave. It's evil, but it's survivable. And if we intervene? They might kill everyone out of spite. Or we might save them all. Or we might trigger a fight that gets half the village caught in the crossfire. O'Neill's knuckles were white on his P90. This isn't our first rodeo, Captain. Sometimes the right choice is the one that lets you live to fight another day. In the village square, Ketal raised a hand, and Jaffa began selecting villagers from the crowd, young, healthy specimens who would fetch good prices or serve well in mines and labor camps. Families were torn apart, children screaming for parents who were dragged away in chains. The execution line remained, their deaths promised if cooperation wasn't immediate and total. Daniel had his radio out. Jack, we can't just watch this. There has to be. I know, O'Neill snapped, his command voice cracking. Carter, tactical assessment. Any way we can even the odds? Carter studied her scanner, her scientific mind running calculations that her conscience rebelled against. The Hotak's shields are up, but it's in low hover, probably to intimidate rather than for tactical positioning. If we could disable the shields or draw off the Jaffa complement, she trailed off, recognizing how thin the possibilities were. Titus had been speaking quietly with his brothers in Battlecant, their helmets almost touching as tactical doctrine flowed between them at conversation speeds that suggested years of coordinated combat. Finally, he turned to O'Neill. Colonel, request permission to engage. Permission denied. We're pulling back. Then I formally request that you and your team withdraw while the Ultramarines engage independently, Titus stated, his voice carrying absolute certainty. This would place no culpability on Stargate Command and preserve your diplomatic protocols. We will accept full responsibility for our actions. O'Neill stared at the Space Marine captain, trying to read an expression carved from gene-forged certainty. You're talking about 5 of you against 40 Jaffa and a Hotak. That's not courage, that's suicide. That is Tuesday, Brother Varus rumbled. We have held worse odds against more dangerous foes. TLC stepped forward, his staff weapon at ready. If the Ultramarines engage, I will stand with them. I will not watch Jaffa enslave the innocent while I possess the strength to prevent it. Don't, O'Neill began, but the Jaffa's expression was immovable. O'Neill, you taught me that there comes a time when protocol must yield to conscience. This is that time. Below, 3 more villagers were dragged to the execution line. Ketal's amplified laughter echoed across the valley. Your gods grow impatient. 10 more deaths to teach obedience. Daniel had moved beside TLC, his pistol drawn despite his near uselessness in firefights. Jack, I can't walk away from this. I won't. Carter looked between her team and the village, her hand on her P90's grip. Sir. O'Neill closed his eyes, ran through every regulation he was about to violate, every consequence that would rain down from Hammond and the Joint Chiefs, every way this could go catastrophically wrong. Then he opened them and keyed his radio. General Hammond, this is SG-1. We have a situation. In the seconds it took Hammond's response to arrive, Titus was already issuing orders in Battlecant. The Ultramarines spread out into combat spacing, weapons coming online with lethal readiness. Brother Claudius primed his Narthetium, preparing for battlefield medicine. Brother Varus unlocked his heavy bolter, the weapon's ammunition feed making hungry mechanical sounds. Brother Maximus activated his jump pack, the turbines beginning their building whine. Hammond's voice crackled through O'Neill's radio. Colonel, MALP telemetry shows Goa'uld forces in the settlement. What's your situation? Goa'uld executing civilians and taking slaves, sir. Captain Titus has requested permission to engage. I'm considering approval. The pause lasted an eternity. Then Hammond's voice returned, carrying the weight of command decisions that would haunt him. Colonel O'Neill, you are authorized to render humanitarian assistance as you see fit. But understand, this will have consequences. Understood, sir. O'Neill out. He turned to Titus. You get your permission, Captain. But we do this smart. What's your plan? Titus's smile was terrifying, the expression of a warrior who had dreamed of this moment since the parasitic Xenos appeared. Brother Maximus performs aerial assault, drawing anti-air response and forcing Jaffa to look skyward. Brother Varus provides sustained suppressive fire from this ridge, pinning enemy forces. Brothers Claudius, Leandros, and I advance through the western approach under covering fire, engaging in close quarters where Jaffa staff weapons lose effectiveness. SG-1 maintains overwatch and provides precision fire as targets present. And the Hatak? Carter asked. Will likely withdraw rather than risk bombardment that would destroy their slave-taking operation, Titus assessed. Goa'uld value resources over honor. Once their ground forces collapse, they retreat to preserve assets. He looked at O'Neill. This is sound doctrine, Colonel. We can win this. O'Neill wanted to argue, to find the flaw that would justify withdrawal. But the plan was solid, the Ultramarines' confidence wasn't bravado but experience, and in the village square, Goa'uld was raising his hand to order more executions. Damn it. All right, we do this. But nobody plays hero, we extract if it goes sideways, understood? The Emperor protects, Titus said simply, and activated his helmet seals. His brothers did the same, their red eye lenses glowing like judgment itself. Brother Maximus's jump pack ignited, hurling him skyward in a pillar of controlled thrust and ceramite. He arced over the village like a blue meteor, bolt pistol already firing as he identified targets. The explosive bolts, self-propelled mass-reactive rounds, struck Jaffa with devastating precision, each impact followed by detonations that turned armored warriors into red mist. The effect was instantaneous chaos. Jaffa whirled toward the sky, staff weapons tracking the impossible aerial target. Goa'uld's amplified voice screamed orders in Goa'uld. The Hatak's turrets began rotating, energy weapons charging to bring down the flying warrior. That's when Brother Varus opened fire. The heavy bolter roared, a sound like continuous thunder that rolled across the valley and shook stones loose from ancient walls. Explosive rounds sleet into the village square at 600 rounds per minute, each bolt finding Jaffa warriors who had never encountered firepower that treated their armor as paper. Bodies exploded. Cover disintegrated. The Jaffa formation collapsed into panicked retreat. And through the chaos, 3 blue-armored angels charged down the hillside at speeds no human could match, their gene-forged legs eating distance while bolt pistols sang their devastating hymn. Titus led with perfect tactical form, his chainsword roaring to life as he closed on the nearest Jaffa. The weapon's adamantium teeth tore through serpent armor and flesh beneath, the Jaffa's dying scream lost in the chainblade's shriek. SG-1 opened fire from the ridge, P-90S and TLCS staff weapon adding precision to the Ultramarines' overwhelming violence. It wasn't a battle. It was execution presented as combat, 40 Jaffa warriors learning in their final seconds that they had encountered something far beyond their experience. In the Hatak above, Goa'uld made his calculation and chose survival. The pyramid ship's engines flared, and it began ascending, abandoning ground forces to their fate. Brother Maximus pursued on jump pack thrust, but the Hatak's shields absorbed his bolt pistol fire as it climbed toward orbit. 3 minutes after the first shot, the village square was silent except for the moans of wounded and the prayers of saved. 38 Jaffa lay dead. 2 had surrendered when they realized resistance was pointless. Not a single villager casualty beyond those the Goa'uld had already killed. The Ultramarines stood among the carnage like angels who had forgotten mercy, their armor painted with blood, their weapons still hot from righteous slaughter. Titus deactivated his helmet seals, his scarred face spattered with gore, and approached the freed prisoners. He knelt, an 8-foot giant lowering himself to meet their eyes, and when he spoke, his voice carried unexpected gentleness. You are free. The false gods who enslaved you are dead or fled. We are the Emperor's angels, and we have judged your oppressors unworthy of mercy. He stood, turning to where the village elders were emerging from hiding. Rebuild your lives. Honor your dead. And know that humanity's defenders walk the stars. The villagers stared at him with expressions mixing terror, awe, and desperate gratitude. One elder, an old woman whose granddaughter had been in the execution line, stepped forward and touched Titus's blood-stained gauntlet with trembling fingers. Are you gods? She whispered. Titus's expression hardened. No. We serve the God Emperor, but we ourselves are merely weapons in his hand. We are human, as are you. Never kneel to false divinity again. O'Neill watched the exchange, his emotions a complicated tangle of relief, horror at the brutal efficiency of the Ultramarines' assault, and growing understanding of what Titus had tried to explain. In the Imperium's calculus, this was mercy, fast, brutal, and absolute. No negotiation, no half-measures, just overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Daniel was already moving among the villagers, offering medical attention and trying to minimize the cultural contamination of having Bronze Age humans witness super-soldiers descending like mythological warriors. Carter was scanning for additional threats, her scientific mind cataloging the Ultramarines' combat effectiveness with growing awe. TLC stood beside Titus, two warriors from different eras united by the same uncompromising creed. You fight with honor, Captain Titus. The Goa'uld learned fear today. They learned nothing, Titus replied. They fled to preserve their lives, as parasites always do. But we sent a message, humanity does not kneel. He turned to O'Neill. Colonel, request permission to secure the area and render aid to the wounded. O'Neill looked at the carnage, the freed slaves, the village saved through methods that violated every first contact protocol. Permission granted. But Captain, we're going to have a very long conversation with General Hammond when we get back. I expected nothing less, Titus said. The Emperor protects, Colonel. Even when the cost is measured and regulations violated. The debriefing room at Stargate Command felt smaller than usual, packed with Hammond, SG-1, the Ultramarines, and 3 members of the Joint Chiefs participating via secure video conference. Major Davis stood beside the display screen showing footage from SG-1's helmet cameras, 38 dead Jaffa, explosive violence measured in seconds, and 5 armored giants standing among the carnage like monuments to warfare's darkest efficiency. 38 enemy combatants neutralized in under 4 minutes, General Vidrine stated from the Pentagon, his tone carefully neutral. 0 friendly casualties. 0 civilian casualties beyond those already killed before your intervention. Captain Titus, from a purely tactical standpoint, this was an exemplary military operation. Thank you, General, Titus replied, standing at attention despite his armor making the posture almost comically formal. However, Vidrine continued, his voice hardening, this was also a gross violation of established first contact protocols, an unauthorized combat engagement that could have triggered a wider Goa'uld response, and a demonstration of firepower that will undoubtedly transform the cultural development of P3X-774 for generations. Colonel O'Neill, explain your decision to authorize this action. O'Neill had been expecting this. Sir, we had immediate civilian casualties in progress, a Goa'uld slave-taking operation, and tactical assets, the Ultramarines, specifically designed for this type of engagement. The alternative was watching innocents die while we had the capability to intervene. I made the call. A call that contradicts our non-interference guidelines, another Joint Chief observed. Dr. Jackson, from an anthropological standpoint, what's the cultural impact going to be? Daniel removed his glasses, choosing his words carefully. The villagers witnessed beings they'll interpret as divine warriors descending to save them. Despite Captain Titus explicitly denying godhood, the psychological impact of that rescue will shape their cultural development. We're looking at potential cargo cult formation, religious reinterpretation, possibly even a new mythology centered around angels in blue armor. It's significant contamination. And yet, TLC interjected, those villagers are alive, free, and aware that the Goa'uld are not invincible gods. Sometimes cultural contamination serves a greater purpose than anthropological purity. Hammond had been silent, studying the tactical footage with the eye of someone who'd made similar impossible decisions. Gentlemen, I authorized Colonel O'Neill's action after reviewing the situation. The responsibility is mine. Captain Titus requested permission to engage, Colonel O'Neill approved, and I confirmed. If there are disciplinary consequences, they fall on my command. Actually, General, Vadrine said, the consequences are more complicated. Captain Titus, your combat performance has caught significant attention. The NID has formally requested access to your team for extensive capability assessment. The Joint Chiefs want to discuss potential integration of Astartes methodology into Special Forces training. And the President wants to know if there are more of you where you came from, and if so, how quickly we can recruit them. The room went very quiet. Titus's expression shifted through several emotions, surprise, calculation, and something that might have been concern. General Vadrine, my brothers and I are not a military resource to be requisitioned. We serve the Emperor and the Ultramarines chapter. We are stranded in your time, yes, but we remain bound by our oaths to the Imperium. An Imperium that exists 10,000 years in the future, Vadrine countered. Which means your chain of command is currently non-existent. You're soldiers without a nation, Captain. We're offering you purpose, resources, and the opportunity to continue defending humanity, just in a different era. Leandros bristled visibly. We are Adeptus Astartes. Our purpose is eternal, our loyalty absolute. We do not transfer allegiance like mercenaries shifting employers. Brother Leandros speaks from passion, but he is not wrong, Titus said carefully. We appreciate the opportunity General Vadrine presents. However, our gene seed, our training, our very existence is predicated on serving the Emperor's vision for humanity's future. We cannot simply adopt new loyalties because circumstances have changed. Carter, who had been reviewing tactical data on her tablet, looked up. Captain, with all due respect, your Emperor exists 10 millennia from now. The Imperium you serve hasn't been founded yet. You're fighting for a future that may never happen if we fail here. Doesn't that suggest that your true loyalty should be to humanity's survival, regardless of what form that takes? The question landed like a theological grenade. The Ultramarines exchanged glances, their helmetless faces revealing the complexity of warriors confronting a paradox their training had never prepared them for. Brother Claudius spoke first, his clinical precision cutting through emotional response. Major Carter raises a valid theological concern. If the Emperor does not yet sit upon the Golden Throne, if the Imperium has not yet been forged in the Age of Strife, then our gene seed was created by a future that may be mutable. The Codex Astartes teaches that the Astartes serve humanity's survival above all other considerations. If this time is where humanity faces existential threat, then, he paused, the implications clearly troubling him. Then our duty may indeed be here, regardless of our origins. That borders on heresy, Leandros stated flatly. The Emperor is eternal, his plan divine. We cannot question. We can question tactical deployment while maintaining strategic faith, Titus interrupted, his command voice brooking no argument. Brother Leandros, the Codex itself warns against rigid doctrine in novel circumstances. We face circumstances no Ultramarine has ever encountered. Adaptation is not heresy, it is survival. The video conference screen split, and a new face appeared, Senator Kinsey, whose expression suggested he'd been listening and calculating. Captain Titus, the United States government is prepared to offer your team full military integration, including officer commissions equivalent to your current rank, access to our research facilities, and significant resources to support your operations. In exchange, we need your tactical expertise, your combat capability, and your cooperation in understanding the genetic enhancements that make you so effective. O'Neill groaned audibly. Oh, here we go. Senator, with all due respect, these guys aren't lab rats for whatever super soldier program you're dreaming about. Colonel, we're talking about technology that could revolutionize human combat capability, Kinsey replied smoothly. Imagine entire units of soldiers with Astartes enhancements, stronger, faster, nearly unkillable. We could end the Goa'uld threat permanently. By becoming exactly what we fight against, Daniel interjected. Senator, the Goa'uld use genetic manipulation and technological superiority to dominate other species. If we start mass-producing super soldiers, how are we different? We'd be alive, Kinsey shot back. Dr. Jackson, your idealism is admirable, but it doesn't win wars. Captain Titus and his men represent a military advantage we'd be foolish not to exploit. Titus's expression had gone cold. Senator Kinsey, the process that created the Adeptus Astartes requires decades of preparation, gene seed derived from the Emperor's own genetic template, and surgical procedures that would be considered barbaric by your current medical standards. The mortality rate among initiates is 50%. Those who survive undergo psychological conditioning that some might call brainwashing. And the end result is a warrior who can never truly return to normal human society. His voice carried warning. You speak of revolution. I hear damnation. Mortality rates can be improved with modern medical technology, Kinsey persisted. And as for psychological conditioning, all special forces undergo intensive training. This would simply be more thorough. This is insane, O'Neill stated. General Hammond, please tell me we're not actually considering turning Earth into the Imperium of Man version 0.1. Hammond's expression was carved granite. Senator Kinsey, this conversation is premature and inappropriate. Captain Titus and his team are guests and allies, not experimental subjects. Any discussion of genetic enhancement programs would require extensive ethical review, medical board approval, and presidential authorization, none of which currently exist. Those can be arranged, Kinsey said. General, the President is very interested in. The President, a new voice interrupted as the screen split again to show the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Francis Maynard, has authorized me to clarify official policy. Captain Titus and his Ultramarines are to be treated as allied military personnel with full honors and protections. Any research or integration programs will be conducted with their full consent and cooperation, not as experimental subjects. Senator Kinsey, your enthusiasm is noted and dismissed. Kinsey's face flushed, but he nodded curtly and his feed disconnected. General Maynard continued, his attention focused on Titus. Captain, we would be honored if you and your team would accept temporary commissions in the United States Air Force as special military advisors. This would provide legal framework for your operations, access to resources you need, and formal recognition of your service. There would be no requirement to share genetic enhancement technology, no medical experimentation, and full autonomy over your tactical decisions, subject to mission authorization from General Hammond. Titus studied Maynard through the screen, gene-enhanced perception cataloging micro-expressions and vocal patterns. General Maynard, you offer honorable terms. However, I must consult with my brothers before accepting. The Ultramarines operate by consensus on matters of strategic importance. Understood. General Hammond, please provide Captain Titus whatever time and privacy he requires. Gentlemen, this briefing is concluded. The screen went dark. The room exhaled collectively. Hammond stood, addressing the Ultramarines with the respect of one military commander to another. Captain, you have quarters available for private discussion. Take the time you need. Colonel O'Neill, Major Carter, Dr. Jackson, TLC, my office in 1 hour. As the meeting broke up, Carter fell into step beside Titus in the corridor. "Captain, can I ask you something off the record?" "Speak, Major." "When you were fighting in that village, there was no hesitation. No debate about proportional response or trying to take prisoners. You just eliminated the threat with maximum efficiency." She paused, struggling to frame the question. "Is that who you are, or is that who you had to become?" Titus stopped walking, his massive frame turning to face her fully. "Major Carter, I was recruited into the Ultramarines at age 12. For 6 years, I endured surgeries that rebuilt my body from the genetic level upward. I was taught that humanity exists in a galaxy that actively seeks our extinction, that mercy shown to enemies is cruelty inflicted on the innocents those enemies will later kill. I have fought in 17 major campaigns across 4 decades, and I have never once encountered an enemy that surrendered in good faith or proved worthy of the compassion wasted on them." His scarred face showed no apology. "You ask if this is who I am or who I became. The answer is yes. The Imperium needed angels of death, so it created me. I am what I was made to be. And if we're asking you to be something else?" Carter asked quietly. "Something that doesn't massacre entire enemy forces in 4 minutes? Then you are asking me to betray 10,000 years of tactical doctrine proven in blood across 1,000,000 worlds," Titus replied. "But I am willing to try, Major Carter. Because the Emperor teaches that adaptation is survival, and perhaps in this time, humanity needs something other than angels of death." He paused, something almost vulnerable flickering across his features. "Or perhaps you will learn, as the Imperium did, that sometimes angels of death are the only thing standing between civilization and the darkness." He walked away, leaving Carter to contemplate the terrible possibility that he might be right. In the secure quarters assigned to the Ultramarines, Titus assembled his kill team in a tactical circle. They spoke in rapid battle cant, the conversation flowing at speeds that suggested gene-enhanced cognition operating beyond normal human capacity. "The offer is logical," Claudius assessed clinically. "We require resources, intelligence on this era's threats, and legal framework to operate. Accepting commission provides all 3. It also binds us to authority structures that do not understand the true nature of warfare," Leandros countered. "These humans fight with one hand tied behind their backs, refusing to purge Xeno's collaborators, negotiating with parasitic aliens, concerning themselves with civilian casualties in active war zones. We would be constrained by their weakness. Or we would teach them strength," Brother Varus rumbled. "The Codex instructs that Astartes serve as exemplars, that humans learn by witnessing our dedication. Perhaps our purpose here is to prepare humanity for what awaits them." Brother Maximus, youngest of the kill team, spoke with unexpected wisdom. "Brothers, we debate doctrine while ignoring reality. We are 5 Astartes, alone, 10,000 years before our chapter exists. Whether we accept their commission or refuse, we remain stranded. The question is not whether we serve, but how we serve with honor." Titus had been silent, weighing variables with the tactical mind that had earned him command. "General Maynard's offer preserves our autonomy while providing resources we need. We would operate as attached specialists, not line soldiers. We maintain our oaths to the Emperor while defending this era's humanity." He looked at each brother in turn. "But accepting means we acknowledge that the war we knew may not be the war we face. That the Codex must be interpreted, not merely followed. That we trust humans who have never known the Imperium's necessity. Trust is earned through battle." TLC's voice came from the doorway, where the Jaffa stood with uncharacteristic openness. "Forgive the intrusion, but I wish to speak with warriors who understand what I have experienced." Titus gestured invitation. "Enter, TLC. You are warrior-born. Your counsel is welcome." The Jaffa stepped inside, his presence somehow not diminished despite being dwarfed by the Astartes. "I served false gods for decades, believing their power made them divine. I learned that power without righteousness is tyranny. You speak of your emperor as divine, yet you question your path. This suggests wisdom I did not possess until I betrayed everything I knew. He met Titus's eyes directly. The humans of Stargate Command fight with one hand tied behind their backs, as you say. But that restraint is their strength, not weakness. They win allies because they offer freedom, not servitude. They inspire loyalty because they value life, not merely survival. Your Imperium may be necessary in your time, Captain Titus. But perhaps in this time, humanity can afford to be better. The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Ultramarines had been taught. Finally, Leandros spoke, his voice tight with barely controlled emotion. And when that better humanity faces extinction because they refuse to do what was necessary? What then, Jaffa? Then warriors like you will be ready, TLC replied simply. But until that moment arrives, perhaps you can learn what it means to fight for something beyond mere survival. To defend not just humanity's existence, but its soul. Titus stood, his decision crystallizing. We will accept General Maynard's offer. We will serve as military advisors to Stargate Command. And we will learn if TLC's vision of humanity is possible, or if the darkness we know is inevitable. He looked at his brothers. The Emperor protects, brothers. Even in times before his reign. Especially then. One by one, the Ultramarines saluted, fists crashing against chest plates in acknowledgement. Whatever doubts remained, discipline and brotherhood carried them forward. In Hammond's office, O'Neill was arguing his own concerns. Sir, you saw what they did out there. They're effective, sure, but they fight like every enemy is something to be exterminated. We start down that road, we become what we're fighting against. Or we survive long enough to remain what we are, Hammond replied quietly. Jack, I don't like it either. But Captain Titus was right about one thing, we've been fighting with restraint because we could afford to. The day may come when we can't. When that day arrives, I'd rather have angels of death on our side than facing us. The unspoken fear in those words would haunt O'Neill for days to come. The interrogation room at Area 51 was never designed for someone of Captain Titus's dimensions. The reinforced chair groaned under Ceramite's weight as the Ultramarine sat across from Colonel Harry Mayborn, whose NID credentials gave him access that Hammond's protests couldn't prevent. Behind the one-way mirror, O'Neill watched with growing anger while Carter monitored from her station, recording every word. Captain Titus, Mayborn began with the smooth confidence of someone who believed he controlled the conversation. I've reviewed your combat footage from P3X 774. Impressive doesn't begin to cover it. You and your team accomplished in minutes what would take a Marine battalion hours, with zero collateral damage. He leaned forward. The United States government is very interested in understanding how you achieved these capabilities. Titus's scarred face remained impassive. I already explained this to Dr. Fraser. Gene seed implantation, surgical modification, psychological conditioning, decades of training. The process is centuries beyond your current medical capability. You would create abominations, Titus stated flatly. The gene seed used to create Astartes was designed by the Emperor himself, using genetic templates derived from the Primarchs, his transhuman sons. Without that template, without the precise biochemical triggers, without the Adeptus Mechanicus's sacred rituals, you would produce tumorous monstrosities that die in agony. Those who survived would be psychologically unstable, warriors with enhanced strength but none of the discipline or faith that makes Astartes controllable. Mayborn's smile didn't waver. Captain, you're assuming we'd use your exact methodology. What if we extracted certain elements, the enhanced bone density, the additional organs for toxin filtration, the accelerated healing? Piece by piece, we could build something that works with our technology base. Behind the mirror, O'Neill keyed his radio. Carter, please tell me he's not actually considering this. Sir, the biological samples Dr. Fraser collected during the medical examination are stored in our secure facility, Carter replied, her voice tight. But Colonel Mayborn has requisition authorization from NID oversight. If he pushes hard enough. Over my dead body, O'Neill growled. In the interrogation room, Titus's expression had shifted from impassive to dangerous. Colonel Mayborn, I will speak plainly so there is no misunderstanding. The Astartes enhancement process is sacred. The gene seed within my body carries the genetic legacy of Robot Guilliman and through him, the Emperor himself. If you attempt to extract, analyze, or replicate that gene seed without explicit consent, you will commit heresy so profound that every Ultramarine who ever lives will hunt you across time itself. His voice dropped to a whisper more terrifying than shouting. I have personally purged planets that attempted to create false Astartes. The abominations they produced, mindless, cancerous things that knew only pain and rage. Required orbital bombardment to fully eradicate. Is that what you wish to unleash on your own people? Mayborn's confidence finally cracked. Captain, I'm not threatening you. I'm offering an opportunity for cooperation that benefits both. The door burst open. Hammond strode in with the authority of someone who'd reached the limits of his patience, O'Neill and TLC flanking him. Colonel Mayborn, this interview is terminated. Captain Titus is a military advisor under my command, not an NID research subject. You will leave this facility immediately. General Hammond, I have authorization from. I don't care if you have authorization from God himself, Hammond stated. You're done here. Security will escort you out. As SFs led a protesting Mayborn from the room, Titus stood, his massive frame making the interrogation room feel claustrophobic. General Hammond, I appreciate your intervention. However, this incident reveals a concerning pattern. You're Senator Kinsey, you're Colonel Mayborn. There are factions within your government that view my brothers and me not as allies but as resources to be exploited. You're not wrong, O'Neill admitted. The NID has a long history of making terrible decisions in the name of national security. But they don't speak for all of us. In the Imperium, such division would be crushed as heresy, Titus observed. But I am beginning to understand that your humanity operates differently, fractured loyalties, competing authorities, philosophical disagreements allowed to persist rather than purged. He paused, something almost like respect entering his voice. It is inefficient. Chaotic. And yet you have survived against enemies that would exploit such weakness. Perhaps there is strength in division I was not taught to recognize. Carter had joined the group, her tablet displaying concerning data. General, we have another problem. The biological samples from Captain Titus's medical examination. Someone accessed the storage facility 3 hours ago using credentials that check out but shouldn't exist. By the time security responded, half the samples were gone. The temperature in the room dropped. Titus's hand moved to where his bolt pistol would normally rest, finding only empty air. They required him to disarm for the NID interview. My gene seed has been stolen. Not the progenoid glands themselves, Carter clarified quickly. But tissue samples, blood work, genetic sequencing data. Enough to begin preliminary analysis. Enough to begin attempting replication, Titus corrected, his voice carrying the cold fury of someone contemplating heresy. General Hammond, in the Imperium, theft of gene seed is a crime punishable by death, for the thief, their family, and anyone who aided them. It is sacrilege that threatens the chapter's very existence. Captain, we'll recover the samples, Hammond assured. Colonel O'Neill, assemble SG-1. Major Carter, trace those access credentials. TLC, get Captain Titus armed and ready to move. Sir, Carter said, her fingers flying across her tablet, the credentials traced to a research facility in Nevada, off the books, not officially connected to any government program. Her expression shifted to recognition. The trust. It has to be. They've been acquiring alien technology and conducting unauthorized experiments for years. The trust, Goa'uld infiltrated remnants of the NID, operating in shadows with goals that served neither humanity nor its enemies but something far more self-serving. O'Neill's expression promised violence. How did they even know about the samples? Colonel Mayborn, TLC stated. His interrogation was designed to keep Captain Titus distracted while operatives breached the storage facility. This was coordinated. Titus's fist clenched, ceramite gauntlet creaking. A betrayal within your own ranks. In the Imperium, such treachery would result in summary execution and the traitor's name struck from all records. Here, you will file reports and conduct investigations while the heretics continue their abominations. Actually, O'Neill said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, I was thinking we'd skip the paperwork and go get your samples back. Forcefully. Hammond considered for exactly 3 seconds. Colonel, you are authorized to retrieve the stolen materials using any means necessary. Captain Titus, you and your team will accompany SG-1 as military advisors. Rules of engagement, the trust operatives are to be captured if possible, terminated if necessary. The genetic material must be recovered intact. Understood, General. Titus's expression carried grim satisfaction. I will retrieve my brothers. We will require full combat loadout. 30 minutes later, 2 Humvees loaded with SG-1 and the Ultramarines rolled through Nevada's desert toward coordinates Carter had extracted from the stolen credentials. The facility was disguised as a defunct mining operation, but thermal imaging revealed extensive underground construction and active power sources. In the lead vehicle, Daniel reviewed the tactical briefing with growing unease. Jack, the Trust has access to Goa'uld technology, personal shields, staff weapons, possibly Zat guns. If they're experimenting with Astartes genetic material, they might have enhanced security measures we're not prepared for. Then it's a good thing we brought overwhelming firepower, O'Neill replied, glancing in the rearview mirror at the second Humvee where Titus and his brothers rode in armored silence. Carter, what are we looking at for entry points? Main entrance is heavily fortified, blast doors, automated defenses. But there's a ventilation shaft that connects to the lower levels, wide enough for, she paused. Wide enough for humans but not for Ultramarines in full armor. Then my brothers and I take the front entrance, Titus stated through the radio. We will provide distraction while SG-1 infiltrates through the ventilation system. Once you locate the genetic material, signal extraction and we collapse their defenses from within. That's going to be loud, O'Neill observed. The enemies of humanity deserve no subtlety, Leandros replied. They have committed sacrilege. They will learn the cost of heresy. The vehicles stopped 2 kilometers from the facility, using a rock formation for cover. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of blood and gold. The Ultramarines disembarked, checking weapons with ritual precision, bolt pistols loaded, chains words activated and silenced, armor systems green across the board. Brother Varus's heavy bolter hummed with lethal readiness. Titus gathered his kill team, speaking quietly in battle cant before switching to English for SG-1's benefit. We advance in combat formation Alpha 7. Brother Maximus provides aerial reconnaissance and rapid deployment. Brother Varus establishes fire position with overlapping coverage. Brothers Leandros, Claudius, and I conduct frontal assault, breaching primary defenses. Once SG-1 achieves infiltration, we maintain suppression until extraction is confirmed. What about prisoners? Daniel asked. If we capture trust operatives, they could provide intelligence on other operations. If they surrender immediately and completely, they will be preserved, Titus allowed. If they resist, they will be eliminated. The Codex Astartes is clear, heretics who defile sacred gene seed forfeit all mercy. The assault began at nightfall. Brother Maximus's jump pack ignited, launching him skyward to circle the facility in wide arcs, his enhanced vision cataloging defenses that thermal imaging had missed, automated turrets, minefield perimeters, observation posts. His tactical data link fed real-time intelligence to his brothers below. The main entrance was a reinforced blast door set into the mountainside, flanked by pillboxes concealing heavy weapons. Trust guards in body armor manned the positions, their equipment an uncomfortable mix of Tauri military hardware and Goa'uld enhancements. One guard's eyes glowed briefly, a Goa'uld symbiote, not merely human traders. Brother Varus established fire position behind a boulder formation 300 meters out. His heavy bolters targeting reticle painted the pillboxes with calm precision. Targets acquired. Awaiting authorization. Titus led Leandros and Claudius forward in tactical advance, their ceramite armor making them visible but irrelevant. At 300 meters, the trust guards probably assumed they were dealing with humans in bulky gear. By the time they realized their error, it would be far too late. At 100 meters, the trust forces opened fire. Staff weapon blasts and automatic weapons fire converged on the advancing Ultramarines. Energy splashed against ceramite, bullets ricocheted from armor plates, and the Space Marines didn't even slow down. They walked through the fusillade like gods striding through rain, bolt pistols returning fire with devastating accuracy. "This is madness," one trust operative screamed into his radio. "They're not stopping. Nothing's stopping them." Brother Varus opened fire. The heavy bolter's roar eclipsed all other sounds as explosive rounds destroyed the pillboxes, the blast doors supporting structure, and any cover the trust forces had thought would protect them. Secondary explosions rippled through their defensive line as ammunition stores cooked off. Brother Maximus descended from above, his jump pack's exhaust blast scattering defenders as he landed directly in their midst. His chainsword carved through body armor and flesh with equal indifference, the high-pitched shriek of adamantium teeth finding bones serving as counterpoint to the heavy bolter's bass thunder. Titus reached the shattered blast doors, his enhanced strength tearing aside twisted metal that would have required industrial equipment to move. Inside, trust operatives in lab coats fled deeper into the facility, abandoning their posts in panic. The Ultramarines advanced through corridors not designed for their bulk, ceramite scraping against concrete, red-eye lenses glowing in the emergency lighting. Meanwhile, SG-1 had infiltrated through the ventilation shaft, emerging in the lower levels where laboratories hummed with activity. Carter's scanner led them toward a cold storage vault where the stolen genetic material was being processed. Through reinforced windows, they could see scientists working with equipment that made Carter's blood run cold, gene sequencers, cloning vats, surgical apparatus designed for procedures that violated every ethical guideline. "They're actually trying to replicate the Astartes process," Carter breathed. "Jack, there are test subjects in those tanks. They're, oh God." The tanks contained human forms twisted by failed genetic modification, tumorous growths where additional organs had been imperfectly implanted, skeletal structures that had fractured under accelerated bone density increases, faces locked in expressions of agony even in suspended animation. Titus's warnings made flesh, the abominations created when humans attempted to play God without understanding the price. "We burn it all," O'Neill stated flatly. "Every sample, every piece of equipment, every scrap of data. This facility does not survive the night." Daniel was staring at the test subjects with horror-stricken empathy. "Jack, those people might still be alive. We can't just—" "They're already dead, Daniel," O'Neill interrupted, his voice gentler than his words. "Even if we could revive them, the pain they're in." Titus was right. This is abomination. TLC had positioned himself at the door, staff weapon ready for inevitable counterattack. "O'Neill, trust reinforcements approach. We must act swiftly." Carter planted C4 charges on the cold storage vault while O'Neill downloaded what data he could for intelligence purposes. The facility shook as the Ultramarines carved their way deeper, the sounds of bolter fire and chainswords echoing through ventilation shafts. Finally, Titus's voice crackled through the radio. "SG-1, genetic material located." "Confirmed," O'Neill replied. "Setting charges now. Clear the structure, this whole place is coming down." "Acknowledged." Beginning extraction protocol. The Ultramarines fought their way back through corridors now heavy with smoke and screaming wounded. They encountered a final defensive position, trust operatives with Goa'uld personal shields and staff weapons, led by a host whose eyes glowed with symbiote presence. "You dare defile the sacred gene seed of the Adeptus Astartes?" Titus's voice carried the fury of righteousness. "You have chosen damnation. The Goa'uld host smiled through glowing eyes. We have chosen evolution. Your genetic template will create a new breed of Jaffa, stronger, faster, more loyal. The system lords will reward. Titus's bolt pistol barked once. The mass-reactive round penetrated the Goa'uld shield through timing and trajectory that suggested gene-enhanced calculation, struck the host in the chest, and detonated. The symbiote died with its host, both reduced to biological components scattered across expensive laboratory equipment. The Emperor judges, Titus stated to the remaining trust operatives, who dropped their weapons in sudden understanding that they faced something far beyond their experience. And his judgment is death. SG-1 emerged from the lower levels as the facility's structural integrity collapsed under strategic demolition. They ran through smoke and flame, the Ultramarines covering their retreat with suppressive fire that turned the Trust's final defensive position into a killing field. Brother Maximus provided aerial extraction, his jump pack carrying wounded team members to safety while his brothers fought their way out on foot. The desert night lit up as C-4 charges detonated in sequence, the underground facility collapsing into its own foundations. Secondary explosions followed as stored equipment and materials ignited, the funeral pyre visible for miles. The Ultramarines stood watching, their armor scorched and dented but their bearing unbowed. All genetic material accounted for or destroyed, Carter confirmed, checking her scanner. Nothing survived that could be used for replication. Titus knelt in the sand, activating his helmet's external vocalizers to speak the litany of the fallen, words in High Gothic that none of SG-1 understood but whose meaning was clear. Prayer for the damned, for those who had attempted heresy and found only death. When he finished, he stood and turned to Hammond's voice on the radio. General Hammond, mission complete. Heresy has been purged. The gene seed's sanctity is preserved. Well done, Captain, Hammond replied. All teams, return to base. We have much to discuss. As the Humvees rolled through darkness toward Cheyenne Mountain, O'Neill glanced at Titus in the rearview mirror. You know what bothers me most about tonight? How right you were. Those test subjects, those abominations, that's exactly what you said would happen. And it did. In the Imperium, we learned these lessons 10,000 years ago, Titus replied quietly. Humanity's potential is vast, Colonel O'Neill. But so is our capacity for creating horror in pursuit of that potential. The Astartes exist because the Emperor understood both truths and chose to control the horror rather than unleash it. Your trust learned why that control is necessary. By dying, Daniel said softly. Dozens of people died tonight because they tried to replicate your enhancements. And thousands more will live because they failed, Titus countered. This is the calculus of war, Dr. Jackson. Evil contained is evil defeated. We did not create the abominations, we prevented them from spreading. The silence that followed lasted until they reached Cheyenne Mountain, where greater threats and darker revelations awaited. The Tok'ra base on Vorash was a testament to crystalline engineering, tunnels grown from living rock, chambers that pulsed with bioluminescent light, and the ever-present hum of technology that blurred the line between organic and mechanical. SG-1 stood in the council chamber with the Ultramarines, whose ceramite armor looked jarringly synthetic against the flowing natural architecture. The Tok'ra High Council had requested this meeting personally, and their expressions suggested the topic would be far from comfortable. Garshaw of Belodi spoke first, her voice carrying the dual-tone quality of symbiote and host in harmony. Captain Titus, we have reviewed the reports of your combat capabilities and the biological modifications that grant them. The Tok'ra have struggled for generations against Goa'uld forces that outnumber us thousands to one. Your Astartes enhancements represent a potential solution to our tactical disadvantage. Titus remained standing despite the offered seating, his brothers arrayed behind him in parade formation. The Tok'ra fight parasitic xenos who enslave humanity. This is honorable warfare. How may the Ultramarines assist? Selmac, speaking through Jacob Carter's voice, making the proposal carry additional weight, stepped forward. During your raid on the Trust facility, Brother Claudius sustained significant damage to his left arm. The ceramite was breached, and preliminary medical scans suggest internal bleeding that your Laraman cells are struggling to address. Without proper intervention, the injury could compromise his combat effectiveness within weeks. Brother Claudius stood impassive, his medici training evident in his clinical assessment. The damage is manageable. Astartes' physiology will adapt and compensate. But not optimally, Selmak countered. And certainly not quickly enough for ongoing operations. Captain Titus, the Tok'ra can offer a solution. Our symbiotes possess extraordinary healing capabilities. We could provide temporary blending to accelerate Brother Claudius's recovery, repair the damage at the cellular level, and return him to full combat readiness within days rather than weeks. The council chamber went absolutely silent. Every Ultramarine had gone rigid, hands moving unconsciously toward weapons that protocol required they leave at the entrance. Leandros took a half-step forward, his voice carrying barely controlled fury. You offer corruption. You would place a parasitic Xenos within the body of an Adeptus Astartes. This is heresy so profound that merely speaking it aloud demands penance. The Tok'ra are not Goa'uld, Jacob replied, his own voice now, the human host speaking without symbiote override. Sam, tell them. You've seen how Selmak and I coexist. It's not slavery, it's partnership. Carter stepped forward, her expression caught between hope and understanding of the theological minefield she was navigating. Captain Titus, my father was dying of cancer. The Tok'ra offered blending as a way to save his life. Selmak provided healing, extended lifespan, and access to centuries of knowledge and experience. They share the body equally. Two minds, two perspectives, making decisions through consensus. It's fundamentally different from Goa'uld possession. It is still Xenos' corruption of human biology, Leandros stated flatly. The Codex Astartes is explicit, no alien organism may be permitted to merge with Astartes' physiology. Such contamination threatens the purity of the gene seed itself. If Brother Claudius were to blend with a Tok'ra, his progenoid glands would be compromised, his genetic legacy tainted. Future generations of Ultramarines could carry Xenos' DNA. It is unthinkable. Titus raised a hand, silencing Leandros' objection. Brother Leandros speaks doctrine, and doctrine exists for reason. However, we face unprecedented circumstances. He turned to Garshaw. You propose temporary blending only. The symbiote would be removed once healing is complete. That is our offer, Garshaw confirmed. Unlike the Goa'uld, who force permanent blending and dominate the host completely, we Tok'ra respect free will. The symbiote would provide healing, then separate. Brother Claudius would retain full agency throughout. Daniel had been watching the exchange with his anthropologist's eye for cultural collision. Captain, I think the real question here is theological. In the Imperium, you view all Xenos as irredeemable enemies. But the Tok'ra are fighting the same enemy you'd be fighting, parasitic slavers claiming divinity. Doesn't that suggest some aliens might be worthy of alliance? Dr. Jackson, the Imperium has 10,000 years of evidence that Xenos cannot be trusted, Titus replied. For every species that presents as peaceful, a dozen more reveal themselves as existential threats once humanity lowers its guard. The Codex teaches that permanent vigilance is the only protection against Xenos' infiltration and corruption. And yet you're here, working with us, accepting that maybe the Imperium's absolutes don't apply in this time, O'Neill interjected. Captain, you've been adapting your doctrine since you arrived. This is just one more adaptation. Titus turned to Brother Claudius. Brother, the decision is ultimately yours. Your body, your gene seed, your soul. The Codex gives every Astartes autonomy over such fundamental choices. What say you? Claudius's clinical detachment wavered for the first time since his arrival. Captain, I am an apothecary. I have spent decades studying Astartes biology, gene seed purity, and the sacred responsibility of maintaining our chapter's genetic integrity. Everything in my training screams that accepting Xenos blending is heresy. And yet, He gestured to his damaged arm, where armor plates had been temporarily replaced with field repair components. I am compromised. My combat effectiveness is reduced. I cannot fulfill my duties to the kill team at full capacity. If temporary blending restores me to optimal function without permanent contamination, you would consider it, Titus finished. This is not cowardice, brother. This is tactical pragmatism. This is damnation, Leandros interjected. Captain, I must formally object under Codex provisions for doctrinal disputes. Permitting Brother Claudius to blend with Xenos sets a precedent that could corrupt our entire chapter's future. What happens when the next injury occurs? Do we accept Xenos' aid again? And again? Until we are no longer pure Ultramarines but hybrid abominations? The theological tension in the chamber was palpable. TLC, who had remained silent, finally spoke with the authority of someone who understood both sides intimately. Brother Leandros, I carried a Goa'uld symbiote for over a century. It sustained my life, enhanced my strength, and bound me to service of false gods. When I received tretinin, a drug that freed me from symbiote dependence, I thought I had achieved purity. But I learned that purity is not the absence of compromise. It is the presence of choice made with full understanding. He stepped closer to the Ultramarines, his bearing that of a warrior addressing equals. The Tok'ra are not Goa'uld. They do not enslave. They do not dominate. They ask permission and honor refusal. If Brother Claudius accepts blending with full knowledge and free will, his choice is not corruption, it is adaptation. The enemy is not Xenos biology. The enemy is tyranny that removes choice. Leandros looked ready to argue further, but Titus raised a hand. Enough. Brother Claudius, you will have time to consider this offer. We will not decide in haste on matters of such importance. He turned to Garshaw. The Tok'ra's offer honors us. We require meditation and consultation before answering. The council chamber emptied, leaving SG-1 and the Ultramarines in a side room that the Tok'ra had provided for private discussion. The Space Marines formed their tactical circle, speaking in battle cant too rapid for translation, while SG-1 gave them space. Finally, Titus switched to English. Brothers, we face a crisis of doctrine. The Codex Astartes forbids Xenos integration. But the Codex was written for our time, our galaxy, our threats. Here, we encounter Xenos who fight as we do, against parasitic enslavers, for humanity's freedom. He paused, his scarred face showing the weight of command. I am inclined to permit Brother Claudius to accept the Tok'ra's offer, if he wishes. But I will not order it. This is a choice that must come from faith and reason, not obedience. Brother Varus spoke, his deep voice carrying unexpected philosophy. In the Imperium, we are taught that the Emperor's will is absolute. But the Emperor created the Primarchs to think, to adapt, to lead humanity through changing circumstances. Robot Guilliman himself revised the Codex Astartes multiple times as new threats emerged. To refuse adaptation in the face of novel challenges would dishonor his legacy. Guilliman also warned against doctrinal flexibility becoming doctrinal collapse, Leandros countered. If we accept Xenos blending today, what do we accept tomorrow? Ancient technology integration? Alliances with hostile species? Where does adaptation end and corruption begin? Brother Maximus, whose youth made his perspective valuable precisely because it was untempered by decades of rigid doctrine, offered his assessment. Brothers, perhaps we ask the wrong question. We debate whether to accept Xenos' aid as if the Xenos are the variable. But the true variable is us. Are we strong enough in faith to accept aid without losing our identity? If the answer is no, then we are already compromised by our own weakness. The logic struck with unexpected force. Titus nodded slowly. Well said, Brother Maximus. Our strength is not in rejecting all compromise, it is in making compromises from a position of unshakable faith. Brother Claudius, if you accept the Tok'ra blending, you do not diminish your faith in the Emperor. You demonstrate that faith is stronger than fear of contamination. Claudius had been silent throughout the debate, his medici training warring with his doctrinal education. Captain, I am uncertain. The apothecary's oath requires me to preserve gene seed purity above all other considerations. If blending with a Tok'ra contaminates my progenoid glands, would carry that shame until my death and beyond, when my gene seed is harvested for future brothers. Carter, who had been listening from outside the circle, stepped forward. Brother Claudius, what if we could test that? Run genetic analysis before and after blending to confirm whether the symbiote affects your progenoid glands. If we detect any contamination, the symbiote could be removed immediately. You possess the capability to analyze gene seed integrity? Claudius asked, his clinical interest overriding his theological concerns. With Tok'ra cooperation, yes, Carter confirmed. They've been studying human-symbiote interaction for generations. If anyone can identify genetic contamination, it's them. We could make this a controlled experiment with full medical oversight. The moment anything looks wrong, we terminate the blending. Garshaw had returned, having monitored the conversation through Tok'ra sensors. Major Carter speaks truth. We would never intentionally compromise the genetic integrity of an ally. The purpose is healing, not transformation. If Brother Claudius accepts our offer, we will monitor every biological marker to ensure no permanent changes occur beyond the intended healing. Titus looked at Claudius. Brother, the choice remains yours. But if you accept, you do so with the full support of your brothers and the understanding that you act to preserve our combat effectiveness, not from weakness or heresy. Claudius stood silent for a long moment, his enhanced mind calculating probabilities and weighing duty against doctrine. Finally, he spoke. I will accept the Tok'ra's offer, with the condition that Major Carter and Captain Titus personally oversee the medical monitoring. If any indication of gene seed contamination appears, the blending will be terminated immediately, regardless of healing status. Agreed, Garshaw said. We will begin preparation. The blending ceremony requires both host and symbiote to enter willingly, with full understanding of the partnership being formed. Brother Claudius, you should know that the Tok'ra you will blend with is named Cheyenne. She is a warrior and healer who has served our cause for 3 centuries. She has requested this opportunity specifically because she wishes to understand human enhancement from the perspective of a participant. The blending chamber was smaller than expected, almost intimate, a circular room with bioluminescent walls and a central platform where Claudius would lie during the procedure. The Tok'ra symbiote rested in a ceremonial vessel, her serpentine form coiled peacefully. Cheyenne's previous host had died of natural causes, and she had been in stasis awaiting a new partner or return to the Tok'ra Queen for genetic preservation. SG-1, the remaining Ultramarines, and select Tok'ra witnesses assembled as Claudius removed his upper armor, revealing the extensive scarring of someone who had endured decades of combat and the surgical modifications that had transformed him from human to Astartes. His extra organs were visible through semi-transparent skin, the preomner, the multilung, the oolitic kidney. Carter's medical scanner catalogued every detail as baseline data. Brother Claudius, Titus spoke formally, you undertake this action in service to the Emperor and humanity's defense. Let no one question your faith or courage. The Ultramarines stand with you. His brothers responded in unison, fists crashing against chest plates. The Emperor protects. Garshaw approached with Cheyenne's vessel, speaking in the ceremonial cadence of Tok'ra tradition. Cheyenne, do you accept this blending freely and without reservation? The symbiote moved within her vessel, her voice emerging through Tok'ra translation technology. I accept freely. I will honor Brother Claudius's autonomy and work in partnership for our mutual survival and purpose. Brother Claudius, do you accept this blending freely and without reservation? Claudius lay on the platform, his gene-enhanced physiology suppressing the fear response that any normal human would feel. I accept freely. I will honor Cheyenne's partnership and work toward our mutual healing and combat readiness. The ceremony proceeded with ritual care. The symbiote entered through the standard entry point at the back of the neck, and Carter's scanners immediately registered the biological integration beginning, neural connections forming, immune responses being negotiated, 2 distinct DNA signatures starting the delicate dance of cohabitation. Claudius's body tensed, his enhanced physiology reacting to foreign presence with defense mechanisms the symbiote had to carefully navigate. Then his eyes glowed briefly, not the golden arrogance of Goa'uld possession, but a softer amber that spoke of partnership rather than domination. When he spoke, his voice carried dual harmonics. We are integrated. Cheyenne brings knowledge of biology beyond anything I studied. Claudius carries genetic enhancements beyond anything I have encountered. We are learning from each other. Carter's scanner showed the damaged arm already beginning accelerated healing, the Tok'ra's restorative capabilities working in concert with Astartes' regeneration. But it also showed something else, a slight fluctuation in the progenoid gland readings. Not contamination yet, but the beginning of interaction. Captain, Carter said quietly, we're seeing minor changes in the gene seed signature. Not harmful yet, but present. If the blending continues for extended periods, there could be permanent modifications. Titus nodded grimly. How long until the arm is healed? At current rates? 4 days. Then we have 4 days to determine if this partnership is sustainable or if we've made a mistake that will haunt the chapter for millennia. He looked at Claudius/Cheyenne. Brother, how do you feel? The dual voice responded with clinical precision. We feel complete. Cheyenne's centuries of experience complement Claudius's genetic enhancements. We understand wounds from both perspectives, biological and strategic. We could serve the kill team more effectively as partnership than as separate entities. A pause, then more hesitantly, but we also feel the theological weight of what we have become. This partnership violates Codex doctrine even as it enhances combat capability. We are torn between duty and faith. Leandros had been watching with barely concealed distress. This is exactly what I feared. Brother Claudius is already compromised, speaking of partnership and we, as if the Xenos has equal claim to his body and soul. Captain, we must terminate this blending before the corruption becomes permanent. Or, O'Neill offered, we trust Brother Claudius to know his own mind and body. He's a trained apothecary who understands genetics better than anyone in this room. If he says the partnership is working, maybe we should listen. The debate continued late into Vorash's night cycle, while Brother Claudius and Cheyenne worked together to repair decades-old injuries that Astartes' physiology alone had never fully healed. The question of whether this represented humanity's flexibility or its corruption remained unanswered, hanging over the Ultramarines like a judgment yet to be rendered. The ancient outpost on P4X 639 had been hidden beneath glacial ice for millions of years, its presence revealed only by energy readings that Carter's deep space sensors detected during routine stellar cartography. The expedition to investigate consisted of SG-1, the Ultramarines, and a specialized research team led by Dr. Bill Lee, whose excitement at discovering intact ancient technology bordered on the manic. Brother Claudius, still blended with Cheyenne, had proven invaluable in navigating the medical complications of cold weather operations, his combined knowledge allowing the team to survive conditions that would have required abort protocols. The outpost's entrance dilated open at Carter's approach, the ancient gene in her blood triggering security protocols that had waited since before human civilization rose. Interior corridors stretched into darkness that helmet-mounted lights barely penetrated, the walls covered in the flowing script of the ancients, a language Daniel had spent years learning to decipher but which Titus recognized with disturbing familiarity. These glyphs, the Ultramarine captain said, his gauntlet hand hovering over inscriptions without touching them, they are similar to technical notation in standard template construct fragments. Not identical, but the mathematical principles underlying the syntax. He turned to Carter. Major, you said the ancients were humanity's ancestors who achieved technological supremacy before ascending to higher existence. That's our understanding, Carter confirmed, her scanner mapping the corridor's energy signatures. They built the Stargate network millions of years ago, seeded human life across 2 galaxies, and eventually evolved beyond physical form. Why? Because the Imperium teaches that humanity once possessed similar capabilities in the dark age of technology, that before the age of strife and the Emperor's rise, mankind spread across the stars using sciences we can no longer replicate. The standard template construct databases contain fragmentary records of that age, manipulation of spacetime, creation of artificial intelligence, mastery over biological enhancement. His voice carried an edge of revelation. The ancients may be what humanity was before we fell. And the Imperium may be what humanity became after fighting 10,000 years to reclaim even a fraction of that lost glory. Daniel had stopped translating, his mind racing through the implications. You're saying your dark age of technology and the ancient civilization could be the same thing? That would mean the Imperium isn't humanity's future, it's humanity's failure to maintain what the ancients achieved. Or the ancients' failure to prepare humanity for threats that transcended physical reality, Titus countered. The warp exists because psychic energy has nowhere else to go. If the ancients ascended en masse, they may have inadvertently created the conditions that would later birth the Immaterium's horrors. The Imperium's brutality may be the price of preventing a second ascension that would doom the Materium to chaos. O'Neill raised a hand. Okay, fascinating philosophical discussion about humanity's past and future selves, but can we focus on the giant ancient facility we're currently standing in? Because my experience with these places is that they tend to have either really useful stuff or really dangerous stuff, and we should figure out which before something eats us. The team advanced deeper, the corridor opening into a vast chamber dominated by a central platform where something waited, a structure of crystal and metal that pulsed with dormant energy, its architecture suggesting both throne and prison. Ancient text covered every surface, and a holographic interface flickered to life as Carter approached. I'm reading massive power signatures, she reported, her scanner's reading spiking. This thing is still active after millions of years. It's drawing energy from. I can't identify the source. It's not a ZPM, not an Aquata reactor. It's something else entirely. Brother Claudius/Shalon stepped forward, their dual perspective analyzing the device with both Tok'ra technology expertise and Astartes technical doctrine. We recognize components similar to Goa'uld sarcophagus technology, cellular regeneration matrices, temporal stasis fields, neural preservation systems. But the scale and sophistication are orders of magnitude beyond anything the Goa'uld possess. This is not merely healing technology. This is, the dual voice paused, calculating. This is designed to sustain a living being indefinitely while preserving their consciousness intact. Like the Emperor's golden throne, Brother Varus observed quietly. A prison that is also a lifeline, keeping something alive that should have died millennia ago. Titus approached the device with reverence bordering on religious fervor. If the ancients built this, what were they trying to preserve? What was so important that it required eternal stasis rather than ascension? Daniel was translating the inscriptions frantically, his linguistic expertise pushed to its limits. It's a warning. No, a testament. Here lies the bearer of burdens, who chose flesh over transcendence that others might ascend freely. The first sacrifice, who remained when all departed. The guardian of the gate, whose vigil is eternal. There's more, but it's in a dialect I've never seen before. The holographic interface responded to Daniel's translation, ancient systems recognizing linguistic patterns and adjusting. A figure appeared, an ancient, their features austere and timeless, their expression carrying the weight of decisions that spanned eons. The hologram spoke in the language of the ancients, which the outpost systems translated into English with eerie precision. I am Emilius, last of the unascended. When my people achieved transcendence, I chose to remain, to maintain this outpost, to guard the knowledge we dared not take into the higher planes, to ensure that those who came after could reclaim what we left behind. The hologram's eyes seemed to focus directly on Titus. And I see that humanity has indeed returned, though not as we hoped. You bear the marks of deliberate genetic modification, warrior. You have taken flesh that was given and reshaped it for purposes we abandoned. Titus stood at attention, addressing the hologram with the respect due to an elder whose civilization had shaped galaxies. I am Captain Titus of the Ultramarines chapter, Adeptus Astartes, servant of the God Emperor of mankind. We were created to defend humanity against threats that seek its extinction. If you are what humanity was before the fall, then we are what humanity became to survive what followed. The hologram's expression shifted to something between sadness and understanding. The cycle continues, then. We sought perfection through knowledge and transcendence. You seek survival through strength and sacrifice. Neither path is complete without the other, yet neither can coexist with the other. This was always humanity's paradox. Carter had been scanning the chamber's deeper systems, and what she found made her blood run cold. Sir, this device isn't just preserving someone. It's actively suppressing something. I'm reading containment fields, psychic dampeners, and what looks like dimensional barriers. Whatever Emilius was guarding, it's still here. And it's still dangerous. The hologram turned to Carter. You possess the gift of the ancients, the genetic key that awakens our technology. You understand, then, what knowledge without wisdom creates. In our arrogance, we delved into realms beyond physical reality, seeking to understand the fundamental forces of consciousness and existence. We succeeded. And in succeeding, we learned why some doors should remain closed. The warp, Titus breathed. You discovered the immaterium before the Imperium did. You knew about chaos. We knew about the spaces between spaces, where thought becomes reality and emotion births entities that should not be, Emilius confirmed. We called it the void, and we understood that ascension, the transformation of matter into pure consciousness, risked feeding that darkness with psychic energy it could use to manifest in the material realm. So I remained, creating this prison not for an enemy, but for knowledge itself. The research we conducted, the technologies we developed, the understanding we gained, all sealed here, where it cannot be accessed except by those wise enough to understand the price of its use. Leandros had been listening with growing fury. You speak of sacrifice and duty, ancient. But you also speak of hiding knowledge that could defend humanity. The Imperium rose because we refused to let fear govern our survival. If you possess understanding of the warp, technologies to combat chaos, genetic knowledge that could enhance humanity's defenders, then withholding it is betrayal, not wisdom. Brother Leandros speaks from passion, Titus interjected, but his question is valid. Emilius, humanity faces extinction in the age we come from. The enemies we battle are beyond counting, xenos that devour worlds, chaos entities that corrupt souls, ancient machines that harvest the living. Some things are locked up for good reasons, and genetic templates for super soldiers sounds like a really good reason. Colonel O'Neill speaks from caution born of experience, Emilius observed. He has seen what happens when lesser species acquire technologies they cannot control. But Captain Titus speaks from desperation born of endless war. Both perspectives have merit. Both contain truth. The hologram gestured to the crystalline throne prison. I offer a compromise, limited access to specific technologies relevant to your immediate threats, granted under controlled conditions with full understanding of the risks. But the deeper archives, the truly dangerous knowledge, remains sealed until humanity proves it has learned wisdom alongside strength. Carter stepped forward. What kind of technologies are we talking about? Weapons? Defensive systems? Medical advances? All of those and more, Emilius replied. The ancients developed energy shielding far superior to what you currently possess. Healing technologies that could repair even Astartes' battle damage without requiring symbiote blending. Genetic stabilization techniques that could prevent the degradation Brother Claudius fears from his current partnership. And yes, weapons, though I warn you that ancient weapons were designed to fight wars you cannot imagine, and their use comes with consequences you may not survive. Brother Claudius/Shalon had been scanning the containment systems, their combined expertise identifying patterns. We detect proto-consciousness within the sealed archives. Not artificial intelligence, but preserved minds, ancients who chose neither ascension nor physical death, but digital immortality. They serve as gatekeepers, judging those who seek knowledge based on criteria we cannot fully access. They are my brothers and sisters who remain to assist me, Aemilius confirmed. Each an expert in disciplines we dared not take to the higher planes. If you wish to access their knowledge, you must convince them individually that you deserve it. TLC, who had been observing with Jaffa pragmatism, voiced the question everyone was thinking. And if we cannot convince them? If they judge us unworthy? Then you leave with what you brought, your current capabilities, your existing knowledge, and the understanding that some powers remain beyond your reach. The hologram's expression carried neither judgment nor mercy. This is not punishment, warriors. It is protection, for you as much as for the universe you seek to defend. Titus turned to his brothers, speaking rapidly in battle cant before switching to English. We accept your terms, Aemilius. The Ultramarines will seek audience with your preserved gatekeepers and make our case for access. But understand, we do not beg for scraps of knowledge. We negotiate as equals, defenders of humanity addressing those who abandoned that duty for transcendence. Abandoned? Daniel interjected. The ancients ascended because they evolved beyond physical conflict. They chose peace over war. They chose absence over responsibility, Leandros countered. When the galaxy descended into darkness, where were these ascended beings? When humanity fought for survival against horrors beyond description, where was ancient wisdom? They ascended and left us to suffer the consequences of knowledge they— Aemilius's hologram flickered, almost as if the ancient being was experiencing emotion through digital consciousness. You judge harshly, Captain. But perhaps judgment is what we deserve. Very well, access the gatekeeper archives. Make your case. If you convince them to share their knowledge, I will abide by their decision. But know this, once knowledge is shared, it cannot be unlearned. Once technology is deployed, its consequences ripple forward across centuries. Choose carefully what you seek, for you may discover that ignorance was mercy. The team split up, each member approaching different gatekeeper terminals according to their expertise. Carter sought weapons and defensive technology. Daniel pursued linguistic and cultural knowledge. TLC investigated ancient tactical doctrine. And the Ultramarines approached the most dangerous archive of all, genetic enhancement beyond even Astartes' capabilities, the templates that could transform humanity into something that would make Space Marines seem primitive. The gatekeeper that manifested for Titus was an ancient warrior whose bearing suggested she had been a soldier before ascension became mandatory. Her holographic form wore armor that predated the Stargate's construction, and her voice carried the weight of someone who understood warfare's necessity. I am Celestis, the warrior scholar. I preserved knowledge of combat genetics, biological augmentation, and the technologies we developed to defend against threats that conventional weapons could not stop. You seek this knowledge, gene-forged warrior? I do, Titus confirmed. I seek understanding of how to enhance the Astartes process, to eliminate the mortality rate among initiates, to perfect the gene seed so that every human who undergoes transformation survives. The Emperor's legacy is limited by the scarcity of stable gene seed. If your knowledge could change that, millions of potential Astartes who currently die in transformation could instead serve humanity's defense. Celestis studied him with eyes that saw through ceramite and flesh to the genetic architecture beneath. I see what you are, 19 organs transplanted, DNA restructured, psychology conditioned. You are a weapon perfected over millennia of incremental improvement. And you wish to perfect the weapon further. I wish to save lives, Titus corrected. Every initiate who dies in transformation is a loss not just of potential but of a young soul who deserved better than death in pursuit of serving humanity. If your knowledge could reduce the mortality rate from 50% to 20%, to 10%, to 0, would that not honor both your legacy and the Emperor's vision? It would also create super soldiers in numbers that would make your Ultramarines chapter irrelevant, Celestis observed. If transformation becomes safe and reliable, your billion-strong Imperium could create trillions of Astartes. What happens to humanity when its defenders outnumber its civilians? When the weapons designed to protect civilization become civilization itself? The question struck with unexpected force. Titus had never considered the strategic implications of perfect gene seed. The Imperium's foundational assumption was that Astartes would always be rare, elite, separate from normal humanity by necessity of their difficult creation. But if transformation became routine? You see the trap, Celestis said. We ancients faced similar choices. We could have made genetic enhancement universal, granting every human the capabilities we developed. Instead, we chose to ascend completely, taking our enhancements with us. Because we understood that a society of warriors is not a civilization, it is an army waiting for enemies to justify its existence. And armies create enemies when none exist, to validate their necessity. Then what do you propose? Titus asked. That we accept the mortality rate, the limitation, the suffering, because preventing it would somehow corrupt humanity's nature. I propose that you consider why your emperor, who you claim is divine, designed the Astartes process with such high mortality if he possessed the capability to make it safer. Perhaps the price of transformation is meant to be high, to ensure that only those truly committed accept it. Perhaps the scarcity of Astartes is intentional, to prevent exactly the scenario I described. Celestis's expression carried something between sympathy and warning. The knowledge you seek exists in my archives. But accessing it requires you to answer one question honestly. Are you seeking to save future initiates, or to create an army that makes your current force obsolete? Titus stood silent, the question resonating through decades of unexamined faith. Finally, he spoke with the honesty that made him worthy of command. Both. I seek to save lives because every lost initiate haunts me. And I seek greater numbers because the enemies we face are infinite while our defenders are finite. If those purposes conflict, then I am at war with myself. But I will not pretend the war does not exist. Celestis smiled, the first genuine expression the hologram had shown. An honest answer from a warrior who understands his own motivations. Very well, Captain Titus. I grant access to genetic stabilization techniques that could reduce your transformation mortality rate to 20%. Not elimination, because some price must remain. Not perfection, because perfection breeds overconfidence. But improvement, earned through self-awareness and honesty about your purpose. The knowledge downloaded into a crystalline data core that Titus accepted with reverence. Around the chamber, other team members received similar gifts. Carter gaining shield technology, Daniel accessing linguistic databases, TLC learning tactical doctrine from wars humanity had forgotten. Brother Claudius/Cheyenne received genetic stabilization techniques that would allow their blending to continue without gene seed contamination, resolving the theological crisis that had consumed the kill team. As the team prepared to depart, Amelius's hologram materialized one final time. You have proven worthy of limited trust, warriors of two eras. But remember, knowledge is not power. Wisdom in applying knowledge is power. Use what you have gained carefully, or you will create the very darkness you seek to prevent. The journey back through glacial ice felt longer than the descent, each team member processing what they had learned and the weight of responsibility it carried. Titus walked in silence, the data core secured to his armor, thinking about Celestis's question and wondering if the Emperor had indeed designed the Astartes transformation to be deadly by choice rather than limitation. The Stargate beckoned, its ancient symbols suddenly more meaningful after meeting those who had built it. As the team dialed home, O'Neill voiced what everyone was thinking. We just made a deal with digital ghosts who've been dead for millions of years to get technology that could change human civilization forever. Anyone else feel like maybe we should have thought this through more carefully? The path forward is never clear until you have walked it, TLC replied. We can only hope our footsteps do not lead to the abyss. The warning came through SGC's deep space sensors at 0347 hours, 3 Hotak motherships emerging from hyperspace in Earth's outer solar system, their trajectory aimed directly at the planet. But these weren't standard Goa'uld vessels. Their pyramid structures had been modified with technology that made Carter's blood run cold, replicator-style adaptive armor plating, energy signatures matching ancient weapon systems, and shield frequencies that cycled too rapidly for conventional targeting solutions. Anubis, Hammond stated, his voice carrying the weight of facing an enemy who had nearly destroyed Earth twice before. He's learned from his previous defeats. Those Hotaks have been upgraded with every piece of technology he's stolen or conquered. The general turned to his assembled command staff, SG-1, the Ultramarines, and every available team leader. We have approximately 4 hours before they reach Earth. Colonel O'Neill, recommendations. O'Neill studied the tactical display with grim recognition. Sir, our orbital defense platforms won't scratch those shields. F-302s would be swatted like flies. And if even one of those Hotaks reaches bombardment range, they could turn Cheyenne Mountain into a crater. He paused, running scenarios that all ended badly. We need to buy time for evacuation protocols and hope the Prometheus can get into position before they reach weapons range. The Prometheus is 3 hours from Earth, Carter reported. Even at maximum burn, she'll arrive after Anubis enters bombardment range. And sir, I'm reading something else, those Hotaks are carrying something in their cargo bays. Energy signatures suggest biological material in stasis. Thousands of individual life signs. Jaffa warriors, TLC assessed. Anubis intends ground assault in addition to orbital bombardment. He seeks to capture this facility intact, to claim the ancient technology we have gathered and the Stargate itself. Titus had been studying the tactical display with the calculated precision of someone who had fought similar battles across a dozen worlds. General Hammond, those vessels are heavily armed but their strategy reveals vulnerability. Anubis commits his entire force to a single attack vector rather than dispersing for multidirectional assault. This suggests either arrogance or insufficient resources to properly siege a planet. If we can break his initial assault, he lacks reserves for sustained engagement. Break his assault with what? O'Neill challenged. We don't have ships that can match 3 upgraded Hotaks. No, Titus agreed. But you have the Stargate, which allows strategic deployment to any planet in the network. And you have 5 Adeptus Astartes who specialize in boarding actions against hostile vessels. His expression carried the terrible certainty of someone proposing suicide as tactics. We gate to a forward position, use captured Goa'uld technology to beam aboard the lead Hotak, and eliminate Anubis's command structure before his fleet reaches Earth. The briefing room went absolutely silent. Carter was the first to recover. Captain, that's insane. Even assuming we could get you aboard, you'd be facing thousands of Jaffa, Anubis himself who's half-ascended with powers we can barely comprehend, and ship systems designed to repel boarding actions. You'd be walking into a death trap. Death traps are our specialty, Brother Maximus observed with the dark humor of someone too young to fully appreciate mortality. We have breached hive ships of the Tyranids, boarded chaos vessels in the warp, and conducted boarding actions against Necron tomb ships. A Goa'uld mothership, regardless of upgrades, is merely another hostile environment. You're talking about 5 soldiers against thousands, Daniel protested. Even with your enhancements, the numbers are impossible. Dr. Jackson, Titus replied patiently, the Ultramarines held Makridge against an entire Tyranid hive fleet. We defended Kolth when the word-bearers betrayed us with fleet support and demonic summoning. We crushed the Orc Wa'ak on Armageddon when 10,000 Astartes faced millions of greenskin abominations. Impossible odds are what the Adeptus Astartes were created to overcome. Leandros stepped forward, his tactical doctrine analysis overriding his usual zealotry. The Codex Astartes, Chapter 12, Verse 7, when outnumbered, attack. When surrounded, break through. When facing impossible odds, remember that you are Space Marines, and for you, impossible is merely difficult. We have the element of surprise, superior close-quarters combat capability, and most importantly, Anubis expects planetary defense, not counterattack. His arrogance is our tactical advantage. Hammond had been calculating political and strategic costs while his officers debated tactics. Captain Titus, even if your plan succeeds and you eliminate Anubis, your team would be stranded on a hostile vessel in deep space. We have no retrieval capability at that range. You'd be trading your lives for Earth's survival. That is our purpose, Titus stated simply. The Emperor's angels of death do not retire, General Hammond. We serve until we fall. If our deaths purchase humanity's survival in this time, then we die with honor and faith intact. Brother Claudius/Shalon spoke, their dual voice carrying unusual emotion. We have calculated survival probabilities using both Astartes tactical doctrine and Tok'ra intelligence on Goa'uld vessel architecture. The boarding action has approximately 18% chance of success with Ultramarine casualties exceeding 80%. However, success is defined as eliminating command structure and disrupting fleet coordination. Survival is not required for mission accomplishment. That's not acceptable, O'Neill stated flatly. We don't send people on suicide missions. There's always another way. There is no other way, TLC said quietly. O'Neill, I have fought beside you for 7 years, and you have taught me that sometimes the right choice is the one that allows others to live. Captain Titus offers that choice. We should not diminish his sacrifice by refusing to accept it. The Jaffa turned to Titus. I ask permission to accompany the Ultramarines. I know Goa'uld vessel architecture intimately. I can guide you to critical systems and command centers. And I have fought Anubis's forces before. My knowledge increases your 18% to perhaps 20. TLC, no, O'Neill began, but the Jaffa's expression was immovable. I was first prime when Jaffa believed Goa'uld were gods. I helped you prove they were false gods worthy only of death. If Anubis believes himself untouchable because he is half ascended, then I will show him that even false gods can bleed. TLC met O'Neill's eyes. You would do the same, my friend. You know you would. Before O'Neill could respond, Carter spoke up. If TLC is going, I'm going. Someone needs to handle the technical systems, disrupting shields, preventing self-destruct, and most importantly, using the ship's ring transporter to potentially beam the team out before the vessel is destroyed. She held up a hand, forestalling objections. Sir, I'm the only one here who can interface with upgraded ancient technology on the fly. You need me on that ship. Sam, O'Neill started. Jack, you know I'm right. And you know that if we don't stop Anubis here, Earth becomes a slave world or a crater. I didn't join the Air Force to hide behind concrete while others fight. Her voice softened. Besides, someone needs to keep these overzealous super soldiers from doing anything stupid. Major Carter speaks wisdom, Brother Varus rumbled. Technical expertise increases tactical options. We accept her participation. Daniel had been silent, his usual moral objections warring with desperate recognition of necessity. I can't help with the fighting. I'm not a soldier like you all are. But if you're doing this, if you're actually boarding that ship, then, he swallowed hard. Then at least let me help with mission planning. I've translated enough ancient and Goa'uld texts to know their psychological patterns. Anubis is arrogant, but his arrogance follows predictable patterns. We can use that. Hammond looked at his team, the soldiers who had saved Earth countless times, now volunteering for what looked like a suicide mission. I can't order you to do this. But I can authorize it if you're volunteering. We volunteer, they said in unison, 5 Ultramarines, 1 Jaffa, and 1 Air Force Major, united by the understanding that some battles required sacrifice beyond calculation. The next 2 hours passed in frantic preparation. Carter worked with the Tok'ra to acquire Asgard beaming technology reverse-engineered from captured devices. Titus led tactical briefings using holographic displays of HOTAC architecture that TLC provided from memory and intelligence databases. Brother Claudius prepared combat stimulants and emergency medical supplies. Brother Varus loaded ammunition for an assault he knew would exhaust every round. Brother Maximus tested his jump pack for operations in zero-gravity environments. Leandros recited litanies of hate, preparing his mind for the slaughter to come. Daniel approached Titus privately as the final preparations concluded. "Captain, can I ask you something personal?" "Speak, Dr. Jackson. Do you actually believe you'll survive this? Or are you just very good at lying to everyone including yourself?" Titus was silent for a long moment, his scarred face contemplating honesty versus morale. "Dr. Jackson, I have fought for 43 years across 17 campaigns. I have lost brothers, warriors I trained beside, bled with, fought beside for decades. Each time, I thought, perhaps this is the battle where I fall. And each time, the Emperor's protection sustained me while better warriors died." He met Daniel's eyes. "I do not expect to survive the boarding action. I expect to die in service to humanity's defense, as I was always meant to. The only question was when and where. Anubis's Hatak is as worthy a grave as any battlefield." "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard," Daniel replied quietly. "You've lived your entire adult life expecting to die in battle. Doesn't that bother you?" "Bother me?" Titus considered the concept. "No. It gives me peace. Purpose is not found in survival, Dr. Jackson. It is found in service. If I die defending Earth, I die fulfilled. Most humans never know that certainty." The launch window arrived too quickly. SG-1 and the Ultramarines assembled in the gate room, their armor and weapons creating an arsenal that looked ready to assault a fortress rather than board a ship. Hammond descended from the control room, his expression that of a commander sending people he respected to probable death. "Captain Titus, Major Carter, TLC, I want it stated for the record that you are among the finest warriors and officers I have ever had the honor to command. If you succeed, humanity owes you a debt that can never be repaid. If you fall," he paused, emotion breaking through command discipline. "Then you fall knowing you saved billions of lives." "General Hammond," Titus replied, slamming his fist against his chest plate in final salute, "it has been an honor to serve alongside warriors of this era. The Emperor protects. Even in times before his reign. Especially then." The Stargate activated, its event horizon rippling with the promise of passage to a forward operating position where stolen Goa'uld beaming technology waited. The assault team moved through, ceramite and determination united by the understanding that the next few hours would determine Earth's survival. On the lead Hatak, Anubis sat upon his command throne, his half-ascended form hidden within armor that contained energies no fully material being should possess. Around him, Jaffa warriors moved with the confidence of serving the most powerful system lord, a being who had stolen ancient knowledge, conquered death itself, and now moved to claim Earth as the jewel of his empire. "My lord," the first prime reported, "we approach the Tauri homeworld. Our sensors detect no significant orbital defenses. The primitive humans are defenseless." "Excellent," Anubis replied, his voice distorted by the energies that both empowered and consumed him. "Prepare ground forces for planetary assault. I want Stargate Command taken intact. The Ancients' technology they have gathered will be mine, and I will ascend to full godhood using their secrets." He did not detect the beaming signatures materializing in the maintenance corridors 3 levels below his throne room. He did not sense the 5 armored giants and 2 human warriors who had just invaded his flagship. And he would not understand his error until bolter fire began echoing through corridors that had never known such violence. The assault had begun. Brother Varus took position at a junction where 3 corridors converged, his heavy bolter aimed down the longest approach vector. Brother Maximus activated his jump pack, ready for rapid deployment to wherever the team needed emergency extraction or overwhelming force. Brothers Leandros and Claudius/Shalon flanked Titus as the captain led the advance toward the ship's command center, his chainsword idling at low power to avoid detection. Carter worked at a terminal, her ancient gene allowing access to systems Anubis had integrated but never fully understood. "I've got internal sensors online. Approximately 1,500 Jaffa throughout the ship," concentrated in barracks levels and defensive positions. Command deck has. I count 30 warriors plus Anubis himself. Acceptable odds, Titus assessed. Brother Varus, hold this position. No Jaffa reinforcements reach the command level. Brother Maximus, combat air patrol, eliminate any Jaffa attempting flanking maneuvers. Brothers Leandros, Claudius, Major Carter, Tilsi, with me. We end this false god's reign. The first Jaffa patrol died before they understood they were under attack. Bolter fire at close range, explosive rounds that turned armored warriors into scattered biological components. Staff weapon return fire splashed harmlessly against ceramite plate. The Ultramarines advanced like a tide of blue and gold destruction, their gene-forged physiology allowing combat speeds that made them blurs to normal human perception. Alarms began blaring throughout the Hatak. Anubis's voice boomed through shipwide communications. Intruders on the command level. All Jaffa, converge and eliminate. Use overwhelming force, these are not normal Tauri warriors. Brother Varus's heavy bolter opened fire, its sustained roar echoing through the junction as wave after wave of Jaffa attempted to reach the command level. The explosive rounds created a kill zone that no amount of courage or fanaticism could cross. Bodies piled up, blocking the corridors, until surviving Jaffa began using staff weapons to create cover from their own fallen. Brother Maximus's jump pack ignited, launching him vertically through a maintenance shaft to emerge behind a Jaffa formation attempting to flank Brother Varus. His chainsword carved through armor and flesh with mechanical efficiency, his bolt pistol executing survivors at point-blank range. The flanking maneuver collapsed into panic. Titus reached the command deck's blast doors, their ancient-derived materials designed to withstand orbital bombardment. Carter worked at the control panel, her fingers flying across alien interfaces while staff weapon fire forced the team into cover. I can override the locks, but it'll take 60 seconds and we'll lose Surprise completely. Surprise is already gone, Titus replied. Breach the door. We end this. The blast doors opened to reveal Anubis's throne room, a chamber of dark grandeur where 30 Jaffa warriors stood in perfect formation, their staff weapons aimed at the entrance. And upon his throne, Anubis himself rose, energies crackling around his half-ascended form, his voice carrying the power of someone who had touched divinity and been consumed by it. You dare attack a god? His hand raised, an ancient energy lanced out, not the crude force of gold ribbon devices, but true power stolen from beings who had transcended mortality. The energy struck Captain Titus's ceramite armor and blew him backward 20 feet, cratering the bulkhead where he impacted. The other Ultramarines charged forward, their bolters roaring, their faith absolute. The battle for Earth's survival had reached its climax. Titus rose from the cratered bulkhead, his armor system screaming damage warnings that his gene-enhanced physiology ignored. Ancient energy had scorched ceramite black and cracked the Aquila emblazoned across his chest plate, but the Ultramarine captain lived. He had endured plasma immersion, demon fire, and the psychic screams of hive-mind synapse creatures. A half-ascended false god wielding stolen power was merely another enemy to overcome. Anubis. Titus's voice carried the fury of 43 years fighting parasitic tyrants. You claim divinity through theft and corruption. The Emperor judges you unworthy. His bolt pistol barked, mass reactive rounds converging on the throne with explosive precision. The rounds detonated against an energy shield that flared golden, ancient technology perverted to serve a creature that had been denied full ascension for crimes even the ancients considered unforgivable. Anubis laughed, the sound distorted by energies that consumed his voice as thoroughly as they consumed his humanity. You speak of emperors and judgment, gene-forged abomination. But I have transcended mortality, stolen the secrets of beings who walked as gods. What is your faith against knowledge stolen from those who built galaxies? His hand gestured, and 3 Jaffa warriors were lifted telekinetically, their bodies hurled at the Ultramarines like living projectiles. Brother Leandros's chainsword met the first Jaffa mid-flight, the adamantium teeth shredding armor and flesh with merciless efficiency. Brother Claudius/Shalon dodged the second with preternatural agility, the Tok'ra symbiote's reflexes combining with Astartes' combat doctrine to create movement no baseline human could achieve. The third Jaffa crashed into Titus, who caught the body one-handed and used it as a shield against staff weapon fire from the remaining warriors. TLC advanced beside the Ultramarines, his staff weapon firing with the precision of someone who had trained Jaffa for decades. Each blast found gaps in enemy formations, creating tactical openings that the Astartes exploited with brutal efficiency. Anubis, you are not a god. You are a Goa'uld who consumed knowledge beyond your capacity to control. I have seen your kind fall before. You will fall again. Will I? Anubis descended from his throne, his armored form radiating power that made the air itself shimmer. I have died twice, Jaffa traitor, and both times I returned stronger. The ancients tried to stop my ascension, I stole their knowledge and achieved it anyway. The system lords tried to destroy me, I conquered them. What makes you believe your pathetic resistance will succeed where gods have failed? Carter had been working at a secondary terminal, her ancient gene giving her access to systems Anubis had integrated but not fully mastered. The Hatak's shields, weapons, life support, all running on hybrid technology that was part Goa'uld, part ancient, and entirely unstable under her careful sabotage. Jack, if you can hear me on the Prometheus, target the shield generators I'm marking. When they drop, you'll have a 5-second window before backup systems engage. O'Neill's voice crackled through her earpiece, the Prometheus having arrived in Earth orbit moments before. Carter, tell me you're not still on that ship. Still here, sir. Kind of busy. A staff weapon blast scorched the terminal beside her, forcing her to abandon the sabotage program half-finished. She drew her sidearm, inadequate against Jaffa armor but better than nothing, and fired suppressive bursts to buy the Ultramarines' maneuvering room. Brother Maximus had taken to the air, his jump pack roaring as he conducted aerial assault inside the throne room, a tactic that should have been impossible in enclosed spaces but which Astartes' training made devastatingly effective. He descended on Jaffa formations from above, his chainsword carving through warriors who had trained for ground combat and had no doctrine for defending against airborne assault. His bolt pistol executed 3 warriors in rapid succession, each shot precisely placed through helmet vision slits or armor gaps that his gene-enhanced perception identified in microseconds. Brother Varus's voice crackled through the tactical vox link. Captain, I am ammunition critical. Heavy bolter has 90 rounds remaining. Jaffa casualties exceed 400, but reinforcements continue arriving. Request tactical guidance. Hold position until ammunition depletion, then fall back to secondary junction and switch to bolt pistol, Titus ordered, parrying a staff weapon thrust with his chainsword before gutting the wielder. The Emperor protects, Brother Varus. We need 5 more minutes. 5 minutes I shall provide, Varus replied, his heavy bolter resuming its sustained roar. In the junction 3 levels below, Jaffa bodies piled so high that reinforcements had to climb over their own dead to reach firing positions. The Devastator Marine had created a killing field so absolute that even fanatically loyal Jaffa were beginning to hesitate. Anubis had been observing the combat with calculating intelligence, his half-ascended mind processing tactical data at speeds that approached ancient capability. You fight well, gene-forged warriors. But you lack understanding of true power. He raised both hands, and ancient energy coalesced, not crude blasts, but focused manipulation of fundamental forces. The gravity in the throne room inverted. Suddenly, down was up, and the Ultramarines found themselves falling toward the ceiling with bone-crushing acceleration. Ceramite armor struck metal with impacts that would have pulverized baseline humans. The Astartes survived, but their tactical formation shattered, leaving them vulnerable to concentrated Jaffa fire. Staff weapon blasts converged on Brother Leandros, overwhelming even Ceramite's protective capacity. Energy burned through armor plating, scorching the flesh beneath, destroying the SUSN membrane and damaging his secondary heart. The tactical marine fell, his body's redundant systems struggling to compensate for catastrophic injuries. Brother Leandros is down, Brother Claudius/Shalon reported, their dual voice tight with controlled emotion. The apothecary advanced through inverted gravity with desperate speed, their narthecium already extending to provide emergency medical intervention. Staff weapon fire forced them into cover behind a structural pillar, precious seconds lost while their battle brother bled out. Titus watched his brother fall, felt the familiar rage and grief of command, the weight of leading warriors into battles where survival was never guaranteed. But grief was a luxury for after the mission. Right now, there was only the enemy and the mission objective. Anubis, you speak of power while hiding behind stolen knowledge and enslaved warriors. Face me directly, parasite. Prove your claimed divinity in personal combat. The challenge hung in the air, a calculated gambit that appealed to the creature's fundamental arrogance. Anubis had once been Goa'uld, a species whose entire psychology revolved around dominance displays and demonstrations of superiority. Even half-ascended, even corrupted by ancient knowledge, that core remained. You wish to face me in single combat? Anubis's laughter carried genuine amusement. Very well, gene-forged captain. I will demonstrate the futility of flesh against divinity. The gravity reversed again, slamming everyone back to the deck with jarring force. Anubis strode forward, dismissing his Jaffa guards with a gesture that sent them stumbling backward. Ancient energy crackled around his armored form, and when he drew a weapon, it was not a gold ribbon device but something far more terrible, a blade of pure energy, coherent and stable in ways that violated known physics. Titus rose to meet him, chainsword roaring at full power, bolt pistol holstered so he could wield the blade two-handed for maximum force. For the Emperor and humanity's defense. The battle cry that had echoed across 1,000 worlds now rang through an alien throne room, carrying faith that transcended time itself. They met in the center of the throne room, energy blade against chainsword, stolen divinity against engineered mortality. The first exchange should have ended immediately. Ancient energy against ceramite and adamantium should have sheared through the chainsword like paper. But the ancients who created Amelius's data core had included schematics for molecular binding enhancements, and Carter had applied them to ultramarine weapons during the preparation hours. The chainsword held. Impossible, Anubis hissed. Your primitive weapon should have shattered. Nothing is impossible for those who serve with absolute faith, Titus replied, pressing the attack. His gene-enhanced strength drove the chainsword forward in patterns the Codex Astartes had perfected across millennia, high guard into sweeping cut, reverse into rising strike, pivot into thrusting lunge. Each movement was textbook perfect, each strike placed to exploit the gaps in Anubis's defense that 4 decades of combat experience identified instinctively. But Anubis wielded power that made physical combat almost irrelevant. His energy blade moved with speed that shouldn't be possible, guided by perceptions that touched the edges of omniscience. He saw Titus's strikes before they developed, countered movements before they completed, and struck back with force that drove the ultramarine backward step by step. You cannot win, Anubis stated, his energy blade scoring a glancing hit across Titus's armor that left molten ceramite in its wake. I have stolen knowledge from beings who mastered reality itself. I have died and returned. I am inevitable. Titus's response was to activate his armor's combat stimulant dispensers, flooding his bloodstream with chemicals that pushed his already superhuman physiology into overdrive. His heart accelerated, his muscles swelled with oxygenated blood, and his perception sharpened to the point where he could see individual energy particles streaming from Anubis's blade. You are a parasite playing with tools you don't understand. And parasites can be killed. Meanwhile, Carter had reached the shield generator controls, her sabotage program finally executing. Throughout the attack, ancient-derived shield systems began fluctuating, their frequency modulation destabilizing as carefully introduced code conflicts propagated through hybrid systems. Prometheus, shields dropping in 10 seconds. Target marked coordinates, fire everything you've got. On Earth's orbital approach, the Prometheus opened fire. Railguns, missile batteries, and Asgard beam weapons converged on the lead Hotak's shield generators. The timing was perfect, The shields collapsed microseconds before the barrage arrived, and ancient enhanced weapons struck vulnerable systems with catastrophic results. Explosions rippled through the Hatak superstructure. Secondary detonations followed as power conduits overloaded and ammunition stores cooked off. The throne room shook violently, throwing everyone except Titus and Anubis to the deck. The two combatants remained locked in their duel, both refusing to acknowledge the ship's destruction around them. "Your primitives damage my vessel," Anubis acknowledged, his energy blade suddenly burning brighter. "But it changes nothing. When you die, I will simply transfer to a new host and rebuild. I am eternal." "Then let me teach you about eternity," Titus replied, and executed a maneuver that the Codex Astartes reserved for desperation. He dropped his chainsword and closed to grappling range, accepting an energy blade strike to his shoulder in exchange for getting inside Anubis's guard. The blade burned through ceramite, through the osmodular-reinforced bone beneath, through muscle and organ tissue that should have been vital. But Astartes' physiology included redundancy for exactly this sacrifice. The damaged shoulder was his left, his secondary heart and backup lung remained functional, and most importantly, his right hand was now positioned perfectly. Titus's power fist activated, a weapon he'd claimed from the ancient outpost's armory, enhanced with technology that could crack tank armor. The servos whined, building hydraulic pressure that multiplied his already superhuman strength 100-fold. And then he struck, driving his fist directly into the center of Anubis's chestplate where armor met energy containment systems. The impact was apocalyptic at close range. Ancient armor cracked. Energy containment failed. And for the first time since his half-ascension, Anubis experienced something he'd forgotten was possible: mortal pain. The half-ascended being screamed, his energy blade dissipating as concentration shattered. Titus pressed the advantage, his damaged left arm hanging useless but his right still functional. He struck again, and again, each blow driven by gene-forged strength and 4 decades of hatred for parasitic tyrants who claimed godhood while enslaving humanity. Anubis's armor shattered completely. Beneath the technological shell, the creature that had terrorized galaxies was revealed, a Goa'uld symbiote wrapped around a host body, both corrupted by energies that should never have touched mortal flesh. The symbiote was burning with ancient power it couldn't contain, killing its host even as it struggled to maintain the half-ascension that was its greatest achievement and ultimate damnation. "You cannot. I am eternal," Anubis gasped, his voice now fully mortal, the pretense of divinity stripped away. "You are meat," Titus replied, and drew his bolt pistol with his functioning hand. "And meat can die." The bolt pistol barked once. The mass-reactive round penetrated what remained of Anubis's armor, struck the symbiote directly, and detonated. The explosion was contained by the host body initially, but the energies Anubis had accumulated, stolen ancient power, half-ascended consciousness, millennia of absorbed knowledge, all destabilized simultaneously. The resulting detonation would have vaporized anyone within 20 meters. But Titus had already activated his armor's emergency shield protocols, and Brother Claudius/Shalon had thrown themselves over Brother Leandros's injured form, their combined Tok'ra and Astartes physiology providing just enough protection. TLC and Carter dove behind the structural pillar that had sheltered them earlier, praying that ancient engineering would hold. When the light faded and the throne room stopped shaking, Anubis was gone. Not dead, because creatures like him never truly died, but dispersed, his half-ascended consciousness scattered across dimensional barriers where it would take centuries to reconstitute. The immediate threat was ended. The Hatak was dying around them, its hybrid systems failing catastrophically as the Prometheus's assault continued. "All personnel, we're abandoning ship," Carter commanded, her military training overriding the adrenaline crash. "Brother Varus, fall back to command level. Maximus, secure an exit route. We're beaming out. Brother Leandros requires immediate medical evacuation," Claudius/Shalon reported, their narthecium working frantically to stabilize injuries that would have killed a baseline human instantly. "His progenoid glands are intact but he cannot survive without surgical intervention within the next 30 minutes. "Then we don't have 30 minutes to waste," Titus stated, retrieving his chainsword despite his shattered shoulder. Major Carter, activate whatever emergency transport you've prepared. Brother Varys, status? Ammunition depleted, switching to bolt pistol, Varys reported, his heavy footsteps audible through the Vox as he fought his way up from the junction. Jaffa resistance collapsing, they recognize their god is dead and fleet coordination is breaking down. The other two Hotaks are retreating to hyperspace. Through the throne room's viewport, they could see it happening, the remaining Goa'uld vessels abandoning their assault, their formation breaking as command structure collapsed. Without Anubis to coordinate them, the system lords commanding the other ships reverted to self-preservation, fleeing before Earth's defenders could destroy them as thoroughly as the flagship. Carter activated the stolen Asgard beaming technology, its energy signature building as it locked onto their biosigns. Prometheus, we're ready for extraction. 6 to beam up, 1 critically wounded. Acknowledged, O'Neill's voice replied, carrying relief so profound it cracked his usual sarcasm. Beaming now. And Carter? Don't ever do anything that stupid again. Can't promise that, sir, Carter replied, smiling despite the exhaustion and terror catching up with her. The beam took them mid-response, dematerializing their forms from the dying Hotak and rematerializing them in the Prometheus's cargo bay. Medical teams were already waiting, descending on Brother Leandros with equipment that looked primitive next to Astartes' medical technology but which Dr. Fraser wielded with desperate competence. Titus remained standing through sheer will, his shattered shoulder leaking blood that his Laraman cells struggled to clot. He watched through the cargo bay's viewport as the lead Hotak, Anubis's flagship, broke apart in silent explosion, its debris scattering across Earth's orbital space like funeral flowers. Mission accomplished, he said to no one in particular, and then his gene-enhanced physiology finally acknowledged the extent of his injuries. He collapsed, unconscious before he hit the deck, his brothers catching him with reverence normally reserved for sacred relics. In the Prometheus's medical bay 3 hours later, Hammond stood beside Titus's recovery bed while Dr. Fraser worked to repair damage that should have been fatal. Captain, you and your team saved Earth. Every person on this planet owes you their lives. Titus's eyes opened, gene-enhanced healing having already begun knitting his shattered shoulder. General Hammond, we did our duty. Nothing more. The Emperor's angels defend humanity regardless of era or circumstance. Even knowing you almost died doing it. Hammond asked quietly. Especially then, Titus replied. What is the purpose of angels if not to stand between humanity and annihilation? We accepted our purpose when we took the gene seed. Everything after that moment was simply fulfilling our oaths. In the recovery room across the corridor, Brother Leandros lay in induced coma while his body repaired injuries that had destroyed one of his 3 lungs and damaged his secondary heart. Brother Claudius/Shalon stood vigil, their combined expertise monitoring every biological marker with precision that impressed even Dr. Fraser. He will survive, Claudius/Shalon reported. The gene seed is intact. Within 3 weeks, he will return to combat effectiveness. The Ultramarines endure. O'Neill, who had come to check on his people, studied the apothecary with new appreciation. You know, when you first showed up, I thought you guys were religious fanatics with guns. But you're more than that. You're true believers who actually live up to what you believe in. That's rare. The Emperor demands nothing less, Claudius/Shalon replied simply. And in return, he grants us purpose, brotherhood, and the certainty that our service matters. What more could warriors require? On Earth below, people who would never know how close they had come to enslavement or extinction went about their lives. The Stargate remained operational. Cheyenne Mountain stood intact. And in the classified files that only Hammond and the Joint Chiefs could access, a new entry appeared. Operation Divine Judgment, 5 Adeptus Astartes from humanity's far future, 1 Jaffa warrior, and 1 Air Force major conducted successful boarding action against System Lord Anubis's flagship, eliminating existential threat to Earth. Casualties, 1 Astartes critically injured, expected full recovery. Status, mission success. Assessment: without Ultramarine intervention, Earth survival probability estimated at less than 5%. Recommendation: formal alliance and continued cooperation with Captain Titus and Ultramarines kill team. In the secure quarters assigned to the Ultramarines, the 5 brothers gathered in prayer formation as Brother Leandros was carried in on a medical gurney. Titus, his shoulder now in regenerative casts that would accelerate healing, led them in the litany of victory. We are the Emperor's angels. We are humanity's shield. We stand where others fall. We fight where others flee. And we triumph where triumph seems impossible. The Emperor protects. The gene seed endures. And though we walk 10,000 years before our chapter's founding, still we serve. Still we fight. Still we defend. The Emperor protects, his brothers responded in unison. Outside their quarters, SG-1 stood listening to words in High Gothic that they couldn't translate but whose meaning was clear in the devotion that infused every syllable. Daniel spoke softly, his anthropologist mind processing what they had witnessed. They came from a future where humanity survives by becoming something we'd consider monstrous. But when Earth needed them, they fought with everything they had and asked for nothing in return. What does that make them? Heroes, TLC replied simply. Regardless of the darkness they come from, their actions here have been nothing but heroic. Heroes, O'Neill agreed. Scary, overarmed, genetically modified, religiously fanatical heroes. But yeah. Heroes. Carter smiled, exhaustion and relief mixing into something approaching peace. Sir, I think we just witnessed something important. 5 warriors from humanity's darkest future proving that even in darkness, honor and sacrifice can still exist. His brothers stood beside him in parade formation. Brother Leandros' injuries healed to the point where only enhanced medical scans revealed the damage he had survived. The crystalline data cores from Emilius's ancient outpost were secured in stasis containers, their genetic stabilization techniques and technological enhancements representing knowledge that could reshape the Imperium, if the Ultramarines ever found their way home. General Hammond descended from the control room, accompanied by SG-1 and a delegation that included representatives from the Joint Chiefs, the IOA, and even Jacob Carter speaking for the Tok'ra. The general's weathered face carried respect earned through shared combat and the understanding that some farewells marked the end of something profound. Captain Titus, in the 3 months since your arrival through the Stargate, you and your brothers have defended this facility from internal betrayal, prevented genetic heresy from spreading, and ultimately saved Earth from conquest by the most dangerous enemy we've ever faced. Hammond's voice carried the weight of official recognition. The President has authorized me to offer you and your team permanent positions as military advisors to Stargate Command, with full commission in the United States Air Force and resources to continue your mission defending humanity. Titus met Hammond's eyes with the directness of one soldier to another. General Hammond, we are honored by your offer. But we are Ultramarines, we serve the Emperor and the Chapter, not national governments. Our oaths were sworn 10,000 years in the future to a sovereign who has not yet been born. We cannot transfer that allegiance, no matter how worthy the cause. We understand, O'Neill said, stepping forward. But the offer stands anyway. If you find a way home, you go with our blessing and our gratitude. If you're stuck here, you've got a place with us for as long as you need it. Brother Claudius, no longer blended with Shalon, the Tok'ra symbiote having separated once his injuries fully healed, spoke with his characteristic clinical precision. The genetic stabilization techniques from the ancient outpost will reduce Astartes' transformation mortality from 50% to approximately 20%. Tens of thousands of future initiates will survive because of knowledge gained here. That alone justifies our time in this era. And we have learned something perhaps more valuable, Titus added, his scarred face showing contemplation that decades of warfare had not entirely suppressed. We came from a future where humanity survives through brutality, genetic modification, and absolute faith in the Emperor's divinity. We believed this was the only path, that mercy was weakness, that Xenos could never be allies, that questioning doctrine was heresy. He paused, choosing words carefully. You have shown us a humanity that wins through different means. Diplomacy alongside warfare. Alliances with former enemies. Questions that challenge doctrine without destroying faith. We do not know if this path can survive the horrors we know await in the far future. But we have seen it work here, in this time, against enemies we understand. Daniel stepped forward, his anthropologist's curiosity finally finding the question he'd been building toward. Captain, if you do make it home, what will you tell the Imperium about us? About this time when humanity fought differently? Titus was silent for a long moment, his gene-enhanced mind processing implications that rippled across millennia. Dr. Jackson, the Imperium's brutality exists because we believe it is necessary for survival. If we report that humanity once thrived while maintaining ideals the Imperium abandoned, it could shake the foundations of everything we believe. It could suggest that the Emperor's path, while necessary, was not inevitable, that other choices were possible. His expression carried something approaching revelation. Such knowledge could be the most dangerous thing we bring back. More dangerous than ancient technology. More dangerous than genetic enhancements. Because it suggests that the Imperium's darkness might have been avoidable. Or it might suggest that your future's darkness made our present possible, TLC observed. Perhaps humanity can afford ideals in this time because warriors like you will exist in the far future to pay the price those ideals cannot sustain forever. The cycle of light and dark, each making the other possible. The Jaffa's words settled over the group with uncomfortable weight. Carter broke the philosophical tension with practical concern. Captain, the wormhole that brought you here was a one-time spatial anomaly, we can't replicate it. You're essentially stranded unless another warp storm intersects with a Stargate, which is, she consulted her calculations. Statistically unlikely to the point of impossibility. The Emperor's will determines our path, Brother Leandros stated, his voice carrying renewed faith tempered by recent experience. If we are meant to return, we shall. If we are meant to serve in this era, then this era is where the Emperor needs his angels. Faith does not require understanding the path, only walking it with conviction. Brother Maximus, whose youth had proven to be wisdom uncorrupted by rigid doctrine, offered his perspective. Brothers, perhaps we were sent to this time not by accident but by divine purpose. The knowledge we gained, the humans we fought beside, the lessons we learned, all of this prepares us for challenges we have not yet faced. The Emperor protects by placing his warriors where they are needed, even if we do not understand why. Brother Varus's rumbling voice carried the pragmatism of someone who measured worth in ammunition expended and enemies destroyed. The tactical situation is clear, we remain in this era until extraction becomes possible. We continue our mission defending humanity from Xeno's threats. We adapt the Codex Astartes to circumstances it was not written for. And we trust that the Emperor's plan encompasses even our displacement across time. Hammond nodded, recognizing the resolution of warriors who had made peace with uncertainty. Then for however long you're with us, consider yourselves part of Earth's defense. We'll provide quarters, resources, and mission assignments as they arise. Major Carter will continue working with you on integrating ancient technology with your equipment. Dr. Jackson will help document your culture and history for future reference. And SG-1 will remain your primary liaison for operations. The Stargate activated behind them, its chevrons locking in sequence for a routine supply mission to an allied world. The event horizon rippled, and for a moment everyone wondered if another anomaly would appear, if the Ultramarines would be pulled back to their own time as suddenly as they'd arrived. But the wormhole stabilized normally, and the supply team moved through without incident. The Ultramarines remained, warriors out of time, angels of death stranded in an era before the darkness that forged them. We stand ready, General Hammond, Titus stated, slamming his fist against his chestplate in formal salute. For the Emperor and for humanity's defense, in any era, against any threat. The Ultramarines endure. The Ultramarines endure, his brothers echoed, their voices resonating through the gate room like a prayer that transcended time itself. As the delegation dispersed and the Ultramarines returned to their quarters, O'Neill pulled Hammond aside. Sir, you realize what we've got here, right? 5 super soldiers from humanity's worst-case future scenario, loaded with knowledge that could either save us or doom us, and no way to send them home. That's either the best thing that ever happened to Earth's defense or a disaster waiting to happen. Hammond watched the armored giants disappear down the corridor, their ceramite footsteps shaking the floor even in retreat. Colonel, I've learned over the years that some of our greatest assets started as our biggest concerns. TLC was an enemy warrior. Jonas was an alien from a world that nearly destroyed us. Even Daniel started as a civilian archaeologist with wild theories nobody believed. He turned to O'Neill with the faint smile of someone who'd seen the impossible become routine. I think 5 genetically engineered warriors from the far future who just saved Earth probably fall into the asset category. At least until they prove otherwise. And if they do prove otherwise? O'Neill asked quietly. Then we'll deal with it the same way we've dealt with every other impossible threat, by improvising, adapting, and hoping we survive long enough to regret our decisions. Hammond's smile widened slightly. It's worked so far. In the Ultramarines' quarters, Titus knelt before his makeshift shrine, the hololithic image of the Emperor flanked by purity seals and battle honors from a chapter that wouldn't exist for 10,000 years. His brothers knelt beside him, and together they recited the litany of the lost. Emperor, we are far from home. Far from our chapter, our brothers, our time. But we are not lost. For wherever humanity stands threatened, wherever Xenos seek to destroy, wherever darkness gathers, there you need your angels. Guide us through this strange time. Protect those we defend. And grant us the wisdom to serve with honor until we return to the chapter, or until we fall in your name. The Emperor protects. Even in times before his reign. Especially then. The words echoed through quarters built of concrete and steel, carried by warriors whose faith had survived crossing 10 millennia of time and everything that experience had thrown at them. And though the Emperor they worshipped had not yet been born, though the Imperium they served had not yet been forged in apocalypse, still they kept their vigil. Because they were Ultramarines. Because they were humanity's defenders. Because they knew no fear. And because somewhere in Earth's future, whether the bright transcendence of the ancients or the dark necessity of the Imperium, their service would matter. The gate shut down with its characteristic whoosh, but the presence of 5 warriors from humanity's darkest tomorrow had permanently altered Earth's present. The question wasn't whether they would fight again, that was certain. The question was whether their example would save humanity from the future they represented, or whether that future was inevitable regardless of what choices were made today. Only time would tell. And for warriors who had already crossed 10,000 years, time was a commodity they understood better than most. The Emperor protects. The gene seed endures. And through the Stargate, more threats and challenges awaited, along with the slim possibility that one day, a wormhole would form that would carry them home. Until that day, they would serve. They would fight. They would defend. They were Ultramarines. And their watch was eternal.